Today's show is brought to you by Casper. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana.
A world gone insane. An upside-down civilization. Cannot be real. A world of madness and terror.
It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Well, I promised you we would premiere a new episode on the first of every month. And I was lying. Oh, I wanted to. I really did. We're just against this episode from the get-go. We had some technical issues on the very first interview, which you may hear a little bit in my interview with Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. Basically, we had a mic issue we didn't know about, but I will say that our wonderful and brilliant engineer, Jeff Fox, really came through and saved the day. So if sometimes it sounds a little funky, it means that Jeff is jumping around to different mics in the room to make sure everybody's voice is heard. It was actually quite ingenious, and we are all indebted to Jeff Fox for getting this episode presented in its complete and always intended form. I'm also in the middle of pre-production on the show on IFC that I'm doing. Stand Against Evil. More on that as it develops, but it's happening. We shoot in the summer, and so I've been pretty busy with that and all the other stuff. So forgive me for my tardy debut of tonight's episode, assuming you're listening at night, which you probably aren't. But let's plunge ahead. Here we are, better late than never, and by the time you hear this, we will already be elbow deep in May's episode. So there. Today, our overall topic is murders, specifically those committed by crazy people. Oh, we go in and out of other topics, but that's what we try to stick to. The screenwriters and producers of The People vs. O.J. Simpson, Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski are here. You can follow Larry on the Twitter at Karaszewski, Karaszewski. We also have a founding member of LA's legendary sketch group, The Groundlings, and a member of the original cast of Saturday Night Live. Someone who I am proud to call a friend, Lorraine Newman, is here. Follow her on @Lorraine, Larraine, Newman, like it sounds. Also joining us, the host of the JV Club, the voice of Cora in the eponymous Legend of Korra, and co-star of the web series Everyone's Crazy But Us. And also, someone I am proud and not a little relieved to report is the co-star of my upcoming series on IFC, Stand Against Evil, the lovely and talented Janet Varney. Follow Janet on the Twitter at Janet Varney, JanetVarney. Me? I'm on the Twitter at Dana Gould. And maybe, just maybe, you're in the mood to see me live, telling my various humor jokes into a microphone. This Thursday through Saturday, April 14th, 15th, and 16th, I will be in Denver, Colorado. Yes, that Denver, at the Comedy Works. And the following weekend, April 21st through the 23rd, I'll be in Austin, Texas, at the Dadgummit Moon Tower Comedy Festival. Details for all of these events available at danagould.com. Hey, while you're there, why not become a subscriber to the show or donate to the show via PayPal? All monies are plowed right back into the production, I assure you. We are not listed as a nonprofit. It just worked out that way. Or say you need to buy somebody something. Maybe you wanted to buy something referenced here on the show, a book, a movie. The best thing to do is go to danagould.com, click on our Amazon banner, and shop away. You get what you want, and for not one penny more, Amazon kicks us back a few shekels to keep the turbines running here at the laboratory. Lastly, why not show your true colors with a Dana Gould Hour t-shirt? The new designs are here, courtesy of the great Ben Walker and the good folks at ComedyFilmNerds.com. Comedy Film Nerds also sells Bevel Aqua Heating and Air Conditioning t-shirts, as well as signed CDs and vinyl of my albums, all the Funhouse, Let Me Put My Thoughts on You, and I Know It's Wrong, and the new one's coming. Oh, and so much more. Bacon. We sell bacon there, too. Go there, get some bacon. ComedyFilmNerds.com. And yes, I signed the bacon too. Speaking of comedy film nerds, wait until you hear this episode.
Tune in, it's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour podcast.
The Dana Gould Hour. An hour, you're right.
Settle back now, content, comfortable, well-fed, and ready for some fine entertainment. Is everybody happy? Then let's go. It's showtime.
We are joined by, among other estimable projects.
Can you just start over?
Yes. The screenwriters of Ed Wood, The People vs. Larry Flint, Man in the Moon, Big Eyes, the current People vs. O.J. Simpson, Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. Scott Alexander.
Hello, Dana.
Larry Karaszewski.
This is the sound of my voice. See, I can follow an order.
It doesn't.
I thought he was being facetious.
No.
No, that's kind of a trope.
You've done this before. You've actually been on the show before.
No, I haven't.
You were on the show back in the 40s. We were on a
everyone
War Bonds
thinks
drive.
I was on the show in the basement of
No.
of
No, I
Concord.
did it here.
You did it here.
What?
He did it here.
Were you approached for The People versus O.J. Simpson, or was that a story that you guys had?
It was not a story that we had. We actually could have neither. We were just in our agent's office, and we've never done
Now,
television.
for people listening at home, an agent is a Jewish person.
Ooh, wow, his name is Cohen, so you are correct. And whatever, we've never done television before, and he sort of just said, "Oh, by the way, there are these people they sort of want to do a miniseries based on the O.J. Simpson trial." And Scott and I just instantly turned to each other, and this never happens. We're like, yes, we're in. That is exactly, if we ever do television, that is exactly what we want to do. And that is, we sort of instantly knew that was a piece that we could do for television, do over like a 10-hour time period.
And that recognition was extraordinarily weird for us. Our gut response to everything is always, no. I don't think we've ever had a project like this where we just instantly got it. And that 10 hours or 12 or 8 or whatever it would be was the right way to do that story.
Right. Because we wouldn't have done it as a movie. Because as a movie with 2 hours, there's too much story, and you've just been like glossing over everything. I mean, it was strange how quickly all the stuff came to our brains, and in terms of just like being able to take this story and examine all the themes and examine all the characters and shape it into episodes. We hooked up, and it turned out that the two people producing it were Nina Jacobson and Brad Simpson, and they were people we knew before and thought they were terrific.
But the other interesting thing about it is just enough time has passed. The OJ trial, it would have been too soon to do it a couple of years ago. I think
that
it's
was
so
the thing.
fresh in people's minds, and then it sort of fades, and it just seems like it comes around again.
I mean, going into it, we had no clue whether it would be received the way we wanted. We had no idea.
Yeah, that question was whether it's too early, whether it's too late. And somehow we managed to hit the zeitgeist right on the head. Right.
I'll give you a weird example. You know what I think is? It's too early, but it's within 4 or 5 years. There's going to be a big REM resurgence. It's just like right now, people aren't thinking about REM, but in a couple of years, people are going to go, "They were amazing."
Yeah,
and then it comes back,
and they're all still alive.
They're all still alive. I saw the lovely Mike Mills 2-3 nights ago.
Yeah.
Mike's your friend,
but no. I mean, nostalgia is one of those weird things where you do have to time it,
correctly.
And
you don't always know you hit it or you don't.
Well, just as a compare and contrast, the same week OJ premiered, a Bernie Madoff miniseries premiered,
and at 10.
And I'm not going to. Unlike you, I'm not going to pass judgment. But
and everybody involved went to hell.
Again, they all seem like very nice, talented people. But it felt a little soon to me.
I agree.
Like,
yeah.
oh, wow. It felt like one of those quickie, old school TV movie things.
You know, people do forget there were a couple OJ TV movies made in the 90s.
I had no memory of that at all.
You know, there's actually even one big one that's got Norman Mailer wrote the script and things like this, but it was just too soon and not particularly
it actually
well
has
done.
a very, very odd gimmick, which I think you'll enjoy, which is it refuses to show OJ.
Yeah.
But almost as a point of eccentricity. So you've got all these scenes in the courtroom and all these scenes with the lawyers talking to OJ, but OJ's never shown. I don't know what they were going for.
Wow. I have no memory of that. Mamet's Phil Spector movie. Clearly he thinks Phil Spector is an innocent victim, which really belies the logic, considering Phil Spector's somewhat famous gun-happy past.
Right.
Clearly, he had a point of view. He had an agenda when he went into it, and that was his agenda. What I find interesting, and we talked about this before, one, this story that you approach as a writer, there's not one audience surrogate in the movie.
Yes.
It's a journalistic piece almost.
Well, it's interesting.
It's their Irwin Allen approach.
Yeah.
The Irwin Allen approach? Okay.
Something for everybody.
Oddly, OJ in The Towering Inferno.
True. Wow.
OJ and Fred Astaire.
Yes, and I think that even surprised us a little bit in that we always knew it would be a multi-character piece, and we always, even at the very beginning, we described it as Robert Altman-esque because, everybody, you know, basically that no one
and
really was.
It's called deep cuts. Come on,
there'd be no particular lead, but everyone would have their moments. But I think what we didn't really know is that the more research we did, the more sort of humanistic our approach would be. In that, I mean, because we all had that memory of who these people were from the 1990s when you saw them on TV and you saw them in court, and you definitely had a strong opinion about all these characters, and that solidified in everyone's mind over 20 years. But the more we did research, we really understood the kind of the beating heart behind all these people. And that sounds kind of cliche like, but we really started to understand Johnny Cochran and Chris Darden and Marsha Clark and all the just peculiar things that were happening in their lives that made them more than just a caricature.
I actually met Robert Shapiro.
Oh, really? We haven't. How was he?
I was at the Aspen Comedy Festival in 97 or 98, and it was the Animal House cast reunion. And I was hanging out with John Landis, who I know and have worked for, and I really love. And somebody came up and said, there's a party tomorrow at John Peters Ranch. It's a big thing. Do you want to – it gets crazier. It gets crazier. Do you want to do –
Dana drops names.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to do stand-up?
Oh.
And I immediately go, suicide mission. Yes. Absolutely not. And Landis goes, yes, he'll do it. And I what are you talking about? And he goes, of course you're going to do it. You can't not do it. So I go, and it's a giant tent on this crazy ranch in Aspen. And there's a stage with a band, and then everybody else is 200 yards away. And it's everybody in show business. And there's just a football field of nothing in between. And I'm supposed to do stand up. And it is literally like self-immolation. Just as they're about to bring me on.
You should have done that. You should have imagined the monk in Vietnam.
But I'll say this. Yeah, exactly. Just before they brought me on, Landis got everybody in Animal House and marched them down and sat in the front row center. And then everybody followed.
Hey, where's Tom Hulse going?
Always follow Tom Hulse.
Always follow Tom Hulse. But Robert Shapiro was the table right next to those people.
Because when I think of comedy,
think of Robert Shapiro. The first thing I said was, thank you very much. Thank you, Robert Shapiro. One quick question. What were you thinking? And it galvanized the room. And he laughed. He was nice. But then what I remember later is I'm down and everybody's congratulating me, blah, 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 blah. And it was winter and he had gloves. And I went, be careful with those gloves. And he went to put one on like a joke and then stopped himself really quickly because there was cameras everywhere. And he didn't want, but that's my big memory of that.
Basically what just happened here is what happened to Scott and I for the last 3 years of our lives was that no matter where we go, no matter what happens, once someone finds out that we were working on this O.J. Simpson thing, someone says, oh, freaking Los Angeles, I got a story for you. You see, I lived on Bundy, or my dad's office was next door to Skip Taft, who ran OJ's off. And it's one of those, everyone has some kind of weird connection to the OJ trial here, and it's sort of like it's just taken over every dinner conversation that Scott and I have had for the past 3 years, unlike any other project we've ever done.
And it really is like the riots and OJ really were like bookends. The riot, like the OJ trial, was the natural conclusion of the riots. The riots started the story,
right,
and the OJ trial ended the story. I remember when the verdict came out, the cover of the LA Times was a white person and a black person standing in front of a wall of TVs at Circuit City across the street from the Beverly Center.
Okay.
And the black person was ebullient and the white person was in shock.
Sure.
Okay.
And it was such an iconic, perfect image. And that was like, yeah, payback's a bit. It is a beautiful, kind of balmy day high atop Mulholland Drive in beautiful Southern California, here at Falcon's Lair Recording Studios. I'm sitting here with a tall glass of yes and a side order of My guest today, a founding member of the legendary Los Angeles improvisational group, The Groundlings, and an original cast member of a little show called Saturday Night Live. Now, one of the most, you know her voice. If you have children, you hear her voice all day in your home. Please welcome funny man Lorraine Newman.
This is the sound of my voice.
Also, the founder of San Francisco Sketchfest, the voice of Cora.
Those are good pulls for me giving you nothing.
Say. And she doesn't like to say this because she is a modest, but she once shot a man in Texas just to watch him die.
I did. I did. I wish you wouldn't have brought that up, but
please welcome Janet Varney.
This is the sound of my voice.
Lorraine.
Dana.
So when did the Groundlings kick into gear in LA? Late 70s?
No, actually, well, kick into gear in what sense? You mean like
when did you, were you always in that theater on Melrose Avenue?
No.
When did you come together as a group?
We started as improv workshop.
Of course it was not late 70s because you were discovered there in the mid 70s.
Right. But, you know, the question is, when did it get into gear and get noticed? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Hard to say. I don't know. We started at the Cellar Theater, which was on Vermont, and it was literally a cellar.
Uh-huh.
And then we went to the Oxford Theater, which has now got another name, but it's still a theater. And then when I was cast in SNL, then they moved to Melrose.
This is the question that I have been wanting to ask you. You're in show business in Los Angeles in the 70s. Then you're on the cast of Saturday Night Live in the late 70s. In that time, did you ever see anyone smoke pot or take cocaine?
You know, I don't like that question because so many books have been written and they have their own account and just don't believe everything you read. It's a lot of Robitussin.
A lot of Robitussin. I have said, being a stand-up in the 80s, I have seen more cocaine used than your average Eagles roadie.
That's good.
But I've never done it.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
You've been the smart one.
I don't know that. Certainly the glum one. And Janet, you don't have to talk about any of your drug use, but you told the story that you tell about growing up in Tucson. You saw the other side of that, like late 80s bored suburban youth drug use.
Mm-hmm. In a town very close to the border.
Right, in a town very close to the border. And I think that were you guys to trade stories, they would probably be strikingly similar from really rich people in Manhattan at the height of the disco era to 15 years later, suburban Arizona.
Yeah.
Probably the same level of drug use.
Yeah, I don't think that cocaine was as accessible since it's a more expensive drug, but certainly there was like a version of Studio 54 that preteens,
the
teens,
Club Congress.
and
I believe it was the Club Congress.
It wasn't Club Club Congress was 21 and up, and the fine line was all ages. So I don't know how that is a thing. Like, I'm not sure that is all ages just means you will all get drunk and do as many drugs as you want, no matter how old you are. Because I was 13, but if you're at an all ages club, someone will buy you a drink. Someone will buy you many drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Well, there was also drugs when I was growing up as a teenager in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you grew up in Beverly Hills.
So, but I started
no-
in Westwood, Dana. I started in Westwood. They took us there.
You mean God's country?
God's country. Exactly.
When I think of, it's so funny. Whenever I drive into Westwood, automatically the theme from the Big Valley plays in my head.
God, yes. There were kids in school clearly doing heroin and you name it. And, going to the parties with the mamas and the papas and
Really?
Everybody.
Now, were your parents in the business at all?
My dad
or?
was a quilt manufacturer. My mother was an architect.
I'm going to refer you to her episode of the JV Club where she talks extensively about her childhood years.
I am going to. I will.
Teen years.
I only listen to the one of me.
I understand.
No, I don't.
They're good shows.
From the minute you walked in this house, your self-image of me has just gone right into the sewer.
I want you to decorate my house.
Yeah, I could do it.
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just Ape and Varney. For those of you who've never been in my home, and it is my hope that you are Legion. because
Home invasion.
Yeah, I just like to putter around here by myself.
Fair.
I had a different version of drug and alcohol. I grew up in a very large family in a very small house, and I was the only one that wasn't always drunk and or high. And it was utter chaos all the time. One of my favorite stories, hearing a noise in the middle of the night and walking downstairs when I was about, I'm going to say 14, and seeing my brother Kevin drunkenly leaning against the refrigerator with an arc of urine going into a sink full of dishes.
Oh, damn.
And he just looked up at me and said, the only thing you can say in that situation, fuck you. And I think that
the best defense is an
right.
Exactly.
That's right.
And that may have been the first time I ever said the phrase, right, I'm the bad guy. But to me, it was, and then my parents would go away for the weekend and they would have these insane parties where everything was done. And all of my brothers were older. I was the Marilyn Munster of the family. I was actually the one that did my homework and owned books and likes. I just quickly said, I'm not going to do this. And this will be how I form my personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because my house was utterly chaotic, that the minute I left, like I really needed physical order.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. And as orderly as this house is, know that 3 children also live here.
Yeah, that's
so it's really
unimaginable.
So
Well kept.
Well
kept.
It's like it's a mental thing. So it's so hard for me to relate to that because it's so foreign. It really.
What's crazy about the verdict moment is how much coverage there is on it, and that every single TV station got every single loose camera and every extra cameraman they could put into a truck and put their camera in a public place where white people and black people would be watching television.
Yeah.
There's just literally hundreds and hundreds of pieces of tape.
Yeah, because every local channel everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
from Times Square to some small town somewhere that where people are gathering. To Oprah's show that day was her audience watching the verdict. I'm really quite pleased
I
with.
thought had prep for this.
With
and OJ was a famous baseball player.
With our episode 10, our last episode, which is the closing statements and the verdict and the aftermath. People always make jokes on the internet about, don't spoil the ending of your show, that kind of thing. But because we all know what's going to happen, but I don't think either one of us were aware of what power that actually has in that final episode of that, in a weird sense, almost like the film United 93, knowing what's going to happen gives gives a sense of dread. You just see this train wreck coming and it's very, very powerful.
Like I think every Oliver Stone, like W, World Trade Center, those are all before they're all too early.
Right.
Like
That's interesting.
W would have been a great movie to make in about 10 years.
Right. W is a terrific film.
Yeah, but it was just too early.
Yeah,
like
correct.
people did not want to watch George W. Bush back then.
In terms of knowing the ending, it's just sort of watching a slow motion crash.
Yeah.
In that we like the jumping off point of Jeff Toobin's book, which was there's a shitload of evidence. Why did he get off? And that became the thesis for the miniseries.
Right.
which is to say, well, there was all this stuff happening in LA and South Central and race and police and gender politics and television.
OJ was not on trial.
And celebrity and 24-hour news cycle and all this other stuff piled on top of everything else, and it produced an acquittal. And so we just sort of wanted to make the 10 hours about letting the audience understand why it got to an acquittal. Even to a point where we go off in episode 8 and we spend an hour with the jurors, who are these invisible people because they weren't allowed to be on camera. And we thought that'd be kind of interesting just to kind of flip things and take a point of view that no one even thinks about.
And did you interview the jurors?
We interviewed nobody, Dana.
Yeah.
Nobody.
No.
Really?
No one.
I mean, here's the thing. We made a decision early on not to talk to any of the real people.
Oh, that's interesting.
And whatever.
Wasn't there like a weird holdout juror though, like a famous?
The initial vote was 10-2, and there were 2 people who voted OJ guilty, and they certainly didn't stand their ground very long. No, go back to my original point was that we've just felt like everybody involved in the process had written at least 1 book, sometimes 2 books, some cases 3 books. I mean, from Marcia to Johnny to Shapiro to Chris to the jurors to, even
OJ was writing books.
Yeah, even OJ wrote books.
During the trial.
So for us, we felt like we didn't want to go interview.
He wrote a tech war novel for William Shatner during the trial.
Yeah, but even the victims' families wrote books. I mean, My Name is Ron, the Ron Goldman book.
It's an incredibly heartbreaking moment when Fred Goldman says that my son is a footnote to his own murder.
Yeah.
I don't know if he said that, but it's...
Well, we felt that we had to address that and just the horror of having lost your son, and then it turns into this circus.
Yeah.
And whatever. We're as guilty of it as anybody in the sense that, we're making a show about this, but, there are other things that the narrative that we want to tell, but we felt we had to really address this issue.
But that is an important moment. Yeah. I mean, that is an important because Ron was sort of portrayed as like a pretty boy buffoon.
Yes, correct.
Who shouldn't have been the wrong.
Fred had to deal with showing up at court, and then there's vending booths out front selling T-shirts of OJ and collectible bobbleheads and baseball caps of the trial. What the hell is this?
Oh, the point I was going to make was I was on the trial of a murder. I was on a murder jury once.
Oh, really?
3 years ago. And what's amazing is that there was a woman on the jury that wanted to be the foreman. Mm-hmm. Like really wanted to be the foreman. And everyone's like, better you than me.
Sure.
Then you get to know her. She only dates cops. And then she starts going, are we in agreement? Like we're deciding a guy's life, but you're just making up words.
Right.
It was a gang murder. The brother of the victim.
Just picturing a guy in prison right now listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I always thought that was Dana Gould.
Yeah, exactly.
When I get out, I'm going to put a shiv in him.
That podcast is huge in prison. There were guys that were kicked out of.
Do they get IFC in prison?
They were giving gang signs to the witnesses.
Really?
And the victim's brother was on the stand, and literally the attorney goes, "Were you upset when you heard your brother was murdered?" And he goes, "I don't remember." Like there was a guy in the jury booth and the guy in the audience doing that.
Wait, you said a guy in the jury booth.
I'm a guy. Yeah, I was giving gas.
I wanted out of there so bad.
And I thought I was out. I have 2 brothers that are cops. And I was like, is there anything I have 2 brothers that are police officers. Can you hold an AP? Yes, you're in the jury. You're fine.
Right.
I mean, I've been on a few juries, and then one was a criminal case with a really bad guy who beat up an old man. I mean, just beat him to a pulp because the thug didn't like the old man trying to park in his own parking spot. And the thug preferred to steal the old man's parking spot. And so he beat him up. And during the voir dire, what do? Screenwriter. Oh, any we've heard of? And at that point, you're like, oh, maybe I can get out of this.
Yeah.
People versus Larry Flint. Which I'm thinking, that gets me out. They don't want me here. And all the lawyers lit up like, ooh, we like that movie. It's like, oh, yeah, sure. You can hang around.
Well, here's the question. Will the People versus O.J. Simpson get us out of jury duty in the future? I don't know.
So then I'm thinking afterwards, wait a minute, this guy who's now going to jail for, 3 years.
Yeah, but then he'll be out and he knows that you wrote the
He knows me. He knows who I am. he can find me. Oh shit, he's going to come beat me with a tire iron.
And he's
I
a
can see
Writers
that
Guild member, I think, isn't he? Well, no,
He's DJ.
Total tangent. My wife and I, we bought our house from a retired judge. And I would say for the first 5 years we lived there, Emily always had this fear that there was some convict in jail who was just waiting. I got the judge's address, and the second I get out, I'm coming.
You're like Terry
I don't care who's there. They're all going.
We're here for Terry Melcher.
Exactly.
Terry sold the house.
Exactly.
On a tangent, I was fascinated recently when the San Diego Tribune did a public demand that anybody who got a large water rebate from the Metropolitan Water District for removing your grass, all the names be made public because this is taxpayer money.
Right.
And I want to know who are the people who got, they got 20 grand to tear out their lawn? Who are these people? And then a coalition of judges and police officers said you can't put our names out. And it was really interesting how cops and judges maybe live under a different standard than the rest of us because they don't want their address to be out there.
I can tell you that from my own family.
But your brother's got a lot of turf removal money.
Oh my God, their houses are grass. They look like hobbit homes. The only weird thing that I remember about my jury trial was, you know, you are in this weird Kafka-esque bureaucracy. It's like The Prisoner, and I was juror number 6. So literally, I would come in, and the judge would go, "Good morning, number 6." And I felt
wow. The only trial I ever was a juror on was a drunk driving case for a guy who he didn't get 10 feet. He was pulling out of the Roxy, the nightclub, and I felt so bad for him.
Yeah,
he just instantly he was trying to help somebody, but then they noticed he was drunk and he was behind the wheel, and it was like. He was drunk behind the wheel, so it was hard to go. But I tried I had one other guy that we were sort of like, hey, let him alone.
Yeah, a friend of mine was on a jury for a trial. Like a guy was propositioned by a prostitute in some 7-Eleven parking lot, and he said, like, I have to go get money. And he went and got money and came back. And then when he came back, the prostitute was a cop and arrested him. And to me, I was just like, leave him alone. You know, you approached him. It's just like,
he had a big Slurpee too, so that's what he was sort of asking for.
He was hoping she would have a big Slurpee, apparently. Is John Travolta playing Lorne Michaels? That's what I want to know.
That's funny. Via
no,
Dr.
I think
Evil.
Mike Myers was.
Yeah, we know Mike Myers.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if that entered it at all. I mean, I actually think he's just doing a very theatrical version of who he thinks Robert Shapiro is.
But I think it fits because Robert Shapiro is that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, same with Johnny Cochran. I mean, these guys are showmen.
Yes.
You know, these guys are.
The showman showboat aspect we thought was really interesting because as we were sort of delving into the research, we realized that the prosecutors had no idea how to perform in front of a camera.
Right.
They're so outmatched.
And it's just, it's not their game. And Lee Bailey, Bob Shapiro, Johnny Cochran, these guys are born to be on talk shows.
Right. Alan Dershowitz. They're pundits.
They're personalities.
Yeah.
They very smartly played the case in the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
And everybody knew that there's conjugal visits once a week and that stuff is going to leak back to the jurors.
Mm-hmm. We say this quite a bit in the show, but one of Cochran's themes he keeps bringing up is you have to tell a narrative. In a weird sense that these lawyers have to be storytellers, and that is what Cochran is creating. That is certainly what Robert Shapiro was creating when he came up with the race case. Was how can I build a story that will scare Gil Garcetti? The idea that OJ was framed, he's a black man. He never got a break, all that kind of thing. It's just to be a great attorney is to be a really good storyteller and tell a story to the jury that they believe more than the other guy's story.
It's interesting, the Gil Garcetti aspect of it, because it was a lot of their leverages. Do you want another riot?
Yeah, that ran throughout the entire thing.
Janet and I have very similar taste
Her house
in
is
interior
beautiful.
design.
Oh, boy.
But you could have done it for a living, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought that was something I was going to do when I lived in San Francisco. Everything kind of took a weird turn when I came down here.
What? You're funny?
I mean...
Wait, how'd you find that out?
I like to pretend like that was never a dream of mine because it felt so good to ignore and not take any risks. I focused only on what I dreaded. I mean, I say dread like it was inevitable that it was going to happen. And some people argue that it was. Like, oh, you were always going to end up doing this. Shut up. I did not feel that way. But I had such a strong contempt for what I thought was the sort of plastic side of LA that I thought, oh, I just don't ever want to be I don't want that pressure. I would rather have it be a hobby, like performing being a hobby and stuff, and have a profession that kind of works better in a city like San Francisco.
Did you specifically look towards improv?
I had not done improv till my 20s. I hadn't even done sketch till my early 20s. It all sort of happened at once. I was a theater major, and I was silly, but I didn't join any improv troops. When the guys that I started the comedy festival with, who of course said they wanted to start a sketch group, I said, good luck. I don't have any experience doing that.
So
I wouldn't know
long,
where to start. Yeah. So it really very quickly forced me to sort of take all the stuff that they presented to me as like, well, but you're this, and this. Why don't you do this? And I had to kind of go, I guess maybe I could do this.
Well, no one ever says, I want to start a sketch group and then says, for the money.
That's right. That's right. It's certainly not improvisational comedy either.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I want to start an experimental theater group. Ka-ching!
Called Labor of Love.
I can only assume people will pay diamonds for that. Straight diamonds. Yeah.
Did you feel that you needed like a grown-up job?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And do you feel that comes from your childhood where it was basically you and your dad, by and large, and your dad, a normal guy, regular gig, but you didn't have what you would call a traditional childhood.
Right.
And then as you feel that like, I need to become an adult now.
Super fast.
Right. People who come from very like loosey-goosey, hippy-dippy parents, a lot of them become conservative, not just because of the psychological need to rebel against your parents, but they feel like somebody has to be an adult.
Right.
Somebody has to wear loafers.
Sure.
And own proper pants.
Yeah.
No, I felt like that, honestly, when I went on The Simpsons. That was my version of an adult job. Because I started doing stand-up when I was 17. Because I had a car, didn't drink, didn't smoke pot, and didn't do cocaine, I worked all the time. Because the other comedians knew that I could drive. They wouldn't have to offer me any of their drugs. And so literally I started like right out of the gate working 4 or 5 nights a week.
That's amazing.
Which is great.
In the mid-'80s in Boston in a little apartment, walking home from the Comedy Connection, 21 years old, with like $400 in my shoes.
That's fantastic.
Because I knew, like,
Sure,
I kept
smart.
like $60 in my pocket if I got mugged. But I had like $400 in my shoes from working the weekend at the Comedy Connection.
But that's what makes you such a great comic, because I see the way comics work now, and they make an effort to work every night. And it seems like an amazing schedule, but I doubt that they were doing that when they were in their teens and 20s. So the fact that you did that,
having fun.
The fact that you did that,
right?
You know,
well, it's so funny you said it. The fact that I did that then has allowed me as an adult to never make any catastrophically bad decisions.
Exactly, Dana. Exactly.
You see how that worked out?
I do.
I made no childish. I never act out. I always talk it out. So when I was now in my 30s, I was like in my mid 30s, I was engaged, and my fiance and I had just bought a house, and George Meyer said, would you like to come over to The Simpsons a day a week and just punch up jokes? I was like, yeah. In my arrogance at the time, it was so funny. In my arrogance at the time, I was like, well, I could only do Monday or Tuesday.
Right.
Oh,
amazing.
Oh my God.
Because I got a gig. I got to go on the road. It's one of those things where I think like, like when the truck almost takes your head off but doesn't quite.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was a writer on SNL, and he gave me copies of Army Man, which I still have.
Oh, yeah. I still do. I still have my copies of Paying Cash.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was a genius. Still is. And I got the job, and I went in there every Tuesday. And then at one point, I was sitting in The Simpsons on a Tuesday, and Mike Scully, who ran the show, came in and said, hey, your contract's up. And I was literally like, oops, sorry, Mr. Scully, sir. And he just went, you want to come every day? And I went, yeah.
I love that story.
And he went, and he just went to, I'll call your agent. And then he went,
oh my God.
And then he just went, sucker, and walked out. And to me, it was like great, because now I owned a house, and I literally got married 2 weeks later. I had instant adulthood. I was now married. I owned a house, and I had a job where I had to get up in the morning, drive to a studio. I had a pass. I had a parking space. I had an office. I had my own extension. Everybody thought I was a genius because I worked on The Simpsons. Like, of course, then the first thought is, how do I destroy this?
Well, sure. Sure.
But what I found, as you were saying, like over the course of, then I got signed. I was married and then we had children. But after once that settled down, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm too much of an ape. I need to just kind of roam free.
Yeah. There's this very dichotomous existence where you want order and you need responsibility and you need a sense that everything's going to be okay, which is not necessarily what people think of when they think of a performer or a writer or a director, a producer, maybe agent, certainly. Yeah. But, to be that person, that's sort of what I've come to grips with in the last 10 years is that inadvertently becomes this kind of point of looking back and going, God, there's so much about my life that's so unpredictable. You'd think that I was just like, I'm a tumbleweed, baby. And that's not true at all. I may not have sought after a writing job where I'm going into a place every day, but I certainly sort of like need this and I have this regimen and I want this and I get real uncomfortable if someone expects me to go stay out on a weeknight because I don't know what the next day is going to look like. And so I still have this craving for order, even if I don't have a craving for an ordered career.
I understand that. And you do work as hard as anyone I've ever I've known. You don't slack. You and Ben Stiller work harder than any two people I've ever met.
You can't compare me to him. I don't know about that. I would put Chris Hardwick in that category. Chris Hardwick
as well.
But I'm so like, if there's a reason I cannot do something.
I've never called you or emailed you and I was like, what are you doing? Nothing. I've never, had that happen.
I have prolonged periods of nothing in a day.
But even if it's not show business, it's like, well, obviously I'm making a DNA helix out of elbow macaroni. What are you doing?
God damn you. I thought that was true until I found out that I've seen and am more caught up on more television than anyone I know. So I clearly do nothing plenty of the time because at any given time, someone's like, I've really been meaning to catch up on the Nick. And I'm like, I've seen them all. I watched each one of them as they came out. Do you want to know anything about them? Like,
I love it though. I get so pissed off when you have a form at the doctor's office asking you what your hobby is. My hobby is fucking eating in front of the TV. Eyes,
the best.
That's what I love to do. I don't ski. I don't bowl. I like to watch
The only difference is I like to go for a bike ride before I do those things, but that's all I got.
I like to leap from skiing to bowling.
We're talking hobbies.
I'm not one of these, like dynamic people out there, skiing, bowling.
I'm not one of those BMX people.
I'm not like a spy or a guy who has a hoodie shop.
First of all, I guarantee you anyone with a hoodie shop is a spy because there's no way he's making a living selling hoodies.
How many shows do you follow and do you watch?
I couldn't tell you the amount, but I would say they're probably about 23.
That you keep up on?
Yeah.
Well, your kids are kind of...
No, they're not at
just
home.
You.
That's what I mean.
It's just me.
No,
and that's why
No, that's what I mean. Like, you don't have the...
Yeah, and also my work schedule is really easy.
Yeah, because it's VO and you just kind of breeze in.
I mean, I write, but it's like my martini. Watching TV, and I won't do it before 5 o'clock. It's the same rules as the martini. But then after 5, I watch until I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of TV watching, and I've just surrendered. I will not feel guilty.
What is the one you're like, oh, good, this I can watch?
You know what's good is a new one is Into the Badlands is good.
Is it the AMC thing?
Yeah.
I'm
Walking
shocked
Dead.
that I haven't watched it yet.
Actually, the Fear of the Walking Dead
takes the edge off.
Yeah, it takes the edge off.
It does. It does.
It's,
makes the world go away.
Especially after a certain age, it becomes good. Just a TV show. It's like Matt Weinhold, a great stand-up comedian, used to say, I used to think that all I want is sex and dinner and I'm good. And now just dinner can be great.
I mean, yeah, well,
what's wrong with
Do I want to admit that I'm there? Let me think.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're there through no decision.
Choice of your own.
A choice of your own. To me, it's right now 11/22/63.
Oh, I love that show. I read the book.
The book is maybe my favorite Stephen King book, and I'm really into the miniseries.
They're doing a good job.
A really good job.
I like it, and for some reason I'm still struggling with it a little bit.
Is it the larger-than-life, cartoonish overplaying of James Franco?
That's exactly what it is.
The millennial Lyle Wagner?
I just don't care for that.
The millennial miscast actor.
Yeah, that's been my struggle from the beginning.
If you've ever seen Vincent Price playing a romantic lead in Tomb of Ligeia, you know exactly what James Franco looks like in everything. House of Cards.
It's great.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And People versus O.J. Simpson,
Oh, it's
which
fantastic.
I
so
didn't.
good.
I couldn't.
Oh, it's such. I constantly just say it's so arch, but it is so arch.
But it's beautifully. Well,
great.
Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski, who were on the last. No, they're on this episode of this podcast. I don't think John Travolta is being hammy as
I think
Robert
he's
Shapiro.
doing a great job.
I met Robert Shapiro.
Yeah.
Robert Shapiro was a
Well,
larger than
that's
life
the thing.
character.
It was full of larger than life
Yeah.
characters. That whole process and crazy drama was full of larger than life characters. And I think that is
But
a
I
show
don't think
where
he's
I
playing
keep
Robert
thinking,
Shapiro. I think he's playing Lorne.
Interesting.
I haven't
There's a
watched
lot
it
of-
enough to see.
There's a lot
that.
of Lorne. There's a lot of Lorne
How
in his
interesting.
performance.
I find it really tough to watch shows that are dramatizations of real events because I know how it can be trivialized.
Well, that's what's weird about the show to me is that in some weird way, to me, they have successfully given it the gravity. I'm not going to say gravitas because that feels obnoxious right now, but they've successfully assigned the gravity that it necessitates because of what it was and when it was,
the
and
only
that it wasn't
episode I
yesterday,
saw,
but it
they
also
absolutely
wasn't 50 years
accomplished
ago.
that.
But then it's also like so strangely satirical. I think that's really an impressive achievement. And I feel like they're satirical not about what happened and the tragedy. I feel like they're careful to be satirical about
The way it was covered.
the bozos that were involved that didn't treat it with the respect it deserved then, and just how absurd our whole world down here is and can be and was. And yet where it matters, there's like a ton of heart there. I don't know that I could strike that balance as a writer or director or actor. So I'm really impressed by it.
The sense that you also get in watching the miniseries is that OJ almost becomes irrelevant to what the lawyers are doing. Once they settle on their story, he's more of an actor in their play. It's like, can you just do this? Shut the fuck up.
Well, it was a very weird thing to write and that's, I think, one of the reasons why the approach that we took, that Charles Dickens' approach where everyone is a main character, works, that there are certain points in the story where once OJ gets locked in prison, it's hard for him to be a guy shaping the story. He's behind bars, so he can't go out and he can't, he becomes much less active.
Probably a point of dispute, depending which memoir you read, as to how engaged OJ was in the defense. But certainly it's undisputed that OJ had to be babysat every night. Someone had to sit down in the county jail with him because he was bored out of his mind. And after a certain point, his friends stopped showing up. And
so poor Sean Chapman had to go sit down with him in jail every night.
Yeah, it was Sean Chapman. It was Robert Kardashian quite a bit too. That was really Kardashian.
It was primarily Kardashian. It was Shapiro a little in the early days, but then he kind of got tired of that routine.
How long was he in jail during the trial?
The whole trial.
How long was the trial?
Oh, God.
9 months, but
9 months.
wasn't it?
Oh,
We knew all this at one point.
yeah, we used to know this. We've been on this for 3 years, Dana. Well, let's
A long
see.
time. How about that?
11 days. Let's just say 11
Well,
days.
he's locked up on what is it? What, 15 months?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's a long time. Okay, I wonder if Cuba Gooding Jr. played him as a man falsely accused.
I think Cuba was trying to have it all. I mean, because the scripts were presenting the mountain of evidence. Oh my God, look, he did it. And then we sort of chip away at it over the rest of the show. And so I think Cuba sort of was intrigued by the idea of playing it like you can read whatever you want into this performance. If you want to think he did it, if you want to think he didn't do it, or if you want to have your mind get changed during the run of the show.
See, my theory about the real OJ is that, and this is based on nothing, and it's my completely worthless opinion.
Everyone has one on OJ,
Yeah.
so you're allowed. This is one topic you're allowed to have a completely worthless opinion about.
That he convinced himself that he did not do it. That
that's probably correct.
he entered a psychogenic fugue state where he.
I love when you say that.
Well, it's based on the David Lynch movie Lost Highway. Is the story of OJ. It's a guy who kills his wife, cannot conceive that he killed his wife, and literally becomes a different person to justify his own innocence. And
I haven't seen it.
It's an awful movie, but what's also fascinating
Strange enough, Robert Blake is excellent in it.
And he is the agent of the transformation, who then later kills his wife.
Yeah,
in
crazy.
real life.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, really, really strange. But yeah, someone said that David Lynch was obsessed with the O.J. trial, and Lost Highway was basically his way of telling that story.
Crazy.
Wow.
And I can believe that. I mean, I know I've told a lie so many times I've forgot that it was a lie. Minor things, not about hurting children. And I can see that you just...
Wait, you weren't in the original cast of SNL?
Didn't Johnny Cochran have two families?
Yes, he does.
Yes. He had a bit of crazy in his past. He had his black family and his white family, and they did not know about each other, and he would drive back and forth between the two houses. And bizarrely, Johnny Cochran Jr. is from this secret family.
Yeah.
Ah.
Which is kind of wild. So for many years, people did not realize that there was a Johnny Cochran Jr. running around.
And this all came out in the middle of the trial. The two ladies show up on Geraldo together, the ex-wife and the mistress. And it's not actually happening. His wife during the show is Dale, who he basically had a good relationship with, but his ex and his mistress show up on Geraldo and expose this. And the way we played in the show is Marcia, who's had her personal life totally trashed through the media, thinks this is going to be Johnny's moment to get totally torn apart, and it's sort of a bubble for a day. It's like, all right, oh yeah, sure, Johnny Cochran, he's fooling around, and Johnny knows how to manage the press and manage the story and turn it on to the next the next thing.
He had, I think, about 10 years of driving back and forth between his official family and his secret family, and the first family not knowing about the second family. I mean, I could look at the Johnny story and just say, oh, he was being crafty, but my opinion of it is changed by the fact that Larry Nye knew a guy who did this, who was a producer and a studio exec, who had a secret family for years, and then the news broke, and his married wife just freaked out. And saying to our agent, because we knew everybody really well, saying, how could he do this? Our agent Tom said, well, it's because he's crazy. and so I've always thought about that when I think about Johnny, which is, well, maybe he had to have some crazy in him, because there's really no other way to explain someone thinking they're going to get away with having a secret second family.
I am of the belief that no one gets away with anything, but karma works on its own schedule.
Are you talking about OJ in the Nevada jail?
I'm talking about OJ. I'm talking about Hitler. Myself. I've never gotten away with a fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
It does work, but it never works on your schedule.
Right.
And usually it is the nature of karma that by the time it works, you kind of don't care about it anymore. Well, you know what? In the terms of the wheel of karma.
Great Todd Rundgren song, by the way.
Yes. What Todd Rundgren song isn't a great Todd
good.
Rundgren
I agree with you.
The video of him playing Hello, It's Me on the Midnight Special.
Oh, that's a good song.
But his outfit is so...
I actually appear on the Midnight Special with Todd Rundgren.
Really?
Really?
Yes.
What year?
This is late 70s, maybe even 1980. I drove out to California with my buddies, and we were taking the crappy tour of NBC. And all of a sudden I heard Todd Rundgren singing somewhere, and I was like, oh my God. And I peeked in, and he was actually doing a rehearsal for him and his band Utopia. We're going to host a midnight special. And I'm like, oh my God. And they're taping like 2 hours from now. So I managed to get us tickets to be in the audience there. So I got right in front, and I'm the completely idiot guy who stands up in the front and just dances his butt off to Todd Rundgren. And I was also trying to get
How come I've never seen this piece of tape?
Google Utopia, Todd Rundgren. The song is You Cried Wolf on YouTube at Midnight Special.
How is it I've never seen this?
Oh, because I'm kind of embarrassed by it. Even after all these years, I'm like, oh my God,
I will see your
terrible.
Todd Rundgren story.
Yes.
If you ever see Elvis Costello's MTV Unplugged,
okay,
there are two young men with ridiculously giant hairstyles. One of them playing drums on his knees. That's me.
Okay.
And the other is a young Judd Apatow.
I will push in my chips, and I will raise you and say, if you look up Orson Welles at USC in 1981, which is on Google and on YouTube, you will see an 18-year-old Scott Alexander asking Orson Welles a question.
Oh,
and Orson replying.
Yeah, but our two guys slept with B.B. Buell. Did Orson Welles sleep with B.B. Buell?
He slept with Rita Hayworth.
All right, fine.
And Mila Nurmi.
Is that true?
According to Mila. And Mila's line about that was, the first time Orson saw me au natural, he looked at me and said, quite a carcass. And I thought only Orson would look at a naked woman and think about turkey.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, according to Mila, he gave her the clap on a USO tour. We had a lot of long lunches at Musso and Frank's.
Wow. Wow.
Well, bringing it around to the topic of murder.
Exactly.
Have you heard about this TV movie, Manson's Lost Girls? It's a movie. It's a dramatization. And,
Sure.
It's like, oh my God, he is so sexy. The actor that they cast as Manson is good looking, you
Yeah,
know, and
which he was
if
not.
you live through that time, it is absurd that they're doing it, that they're treating the material in that way.
Unless it's somewhere that isn't iTunes or Netflix or Amazon, I could not find anything streamable that is in any way of quality about considering what it is and considering the book Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
Like the thing I ended up with was, it was at least had the words Helter Skelter in it. So I was like, okay, well, this is clearly based on the book. So I'm going to check this out. And within moments, you're like, hey, I'm this guy. I do these tours, dearlydeparted.com. I got a lot of personal contacts here. So we're going to talk about some crazy shit that happened, blah, blah, blah. And so it became like, God damn it, this is more interesting than it deserves to be.
Yeah.
Because he was sort of spiraling off and connecting other things, which then does kind of become interesting because there's all of this other Hollywood history attached.
Yes.
Where he would say, like, oh, okay, well, Folger was connected to da-da-da and this, and interestingly, she bought the house from da-da-da. And then you sort of go, oh, this is pretty interesting. Oh, we're not even talking about Charles Manson anymore. And now there's like perky music playing.
Interesting
What's happened?
story. Alan Bursky, who was a stand-up comic, the thing was that he was 18 and he was working at the Comedy Store. This was a big novelty. So he said I should meet his manager. So we're driving up there and it's Celio Drive and I'm thinking, boy, this house looks familiar. And it was the house.
It was.
Yeah.
And
Before they tore it down.
Yeah, there's a law. When I lived in my previous house that Roddy McDowell owned, we found out that Roddy McDowell lived there because he died there. And there's a law now that you have to disclose because a lot of people are going, that ceiling beam looks familiar and I don't know where I've seen it before.
And the photographs of the scene of the...
But they change the address frequently.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder, is that a way around always having to disclose that? Because it's not like, I mean, certainly now with the internet as well.
I think it's probably the physical structure. And so
they changed the LaBianca's address and it is exactly the same house.
Oh, it is the same house?
Yeah.
It happened with the Black Dahlia. It happened with the Manson murders. And a different thing happened with OJ. They broke the rules of murder. Like, you can murder people. Look, Cain murdered Abel. That was, I believe, 50% of the population at the time.
Genocide.
People have always been murdering everybody. But you don't cut them in half and throw them in a vacant lot. You don't stick a fork in their stomach and write words on the wall in blood. It was like the police said, look, you can murder people, but this is fucking bullshit.
Right.
And in a way, that's what Trump is doing to our presidential...
Indeed.
In a way, he's breaking the decorum rules of the blood sport of a presidential election. And I think there's a reason that people are only waking up to it now. I'll give you an analogy. Let's say, for the sake of this example, let's imagine I'm making love.
Can you give us something more realistic?
No. I'm in space.
Got it.
And everything is working great and everybody's involved is having a good time.
How many people are there?
There's 2.
Can I make it 3? I apologize, Dana.
Can I film it? Nothing.
It's me and a young Thelma Ritter.
All right.
All right.
And I, in the midst of this activity, make a tiny microscopic error in judgment. And with only the best intentions, I shit the bed. Not a little.
Sorry.
Where is this analogy going?
Is my favorite.
Not like you're done.
Precursor
and you look,
to shitting the bed.
Yeah, not like you're done and you look and the cat's at the bottom of the bed. Oh, I didn't know it was there. Like someone threw a tray of lasagna on the back of my legs.
Yeah.
Okay. My guess is for the next couple of minutes, it's going to be really quiet. there's just going to be this, And then after 5 or 6 minutes, you rouse yourself enough to take action. In that case, there's really only one socially acceptable option: murder-suicide.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Although I do think that halfway through, a lot of murder-suicides probably become just
Murders.
murder. Gee, I feel better now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Last episode, we covered Rod Serling's journey from talkative tyke in the idyllic town of Binghamton, New York, through his enduring what was described as a hell on earth on the Leyte Islands of the Philippines during World War II. We discussed his rise to fame as one of the most original writers, helping propel television into what was known as its golden age, and through his constant battles and frustrations with censors, be they networks or sponsors, and his proclaimed retirement from controversy with the creation of a science fiction anthology program called The Twilight Zone. Well, part of that was a bunch of hooey. The Twilight Zone was Serling's Trojan horse. He was not trying to get away from controversy. He was just trying to slip it past the censors. This was the late 1950s, and America was just beginning to feel the socio-cultural earthquakes that would come to define the next decade. Take, for example, civil rights. Serling tried to address racism with a story on Playhouse 90 called A Town Is Turned to Dust, a thinly veiled retelling of the murder of Emmett Till, the African-American teenager cut down in 1955, lynched, for the high crime of looking at a white woman the wrong way. But the sponsors of Playhouse 90, not desiring to offend anyone or invite any controversy, gutted the script, and it drove Serling nuts. He thought, quite correctly, with The Twilight Zone, he could tell the same story. But instead of using black people and white people, he could use, say, people from Mars, people from Venus. He could get the same point across without raising the suspicions of the censors. And with that, on October 2nd, 1959, a new program premiered on the CBS television network.
You are about to enter another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land of imagination. Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
The reviews were phenomenal. Daily Variety proclaimed it was the best that has ever been accomplished in half-hour film television. The ratings were, let's say, not so phenomenal. CBS was expecting a number around, say, a 21 or a 22 share. But by its third episode, Mr. Denton on Doomsday, the ratings had sunk down to a 16.3 share. To show you just how much network viewing habits have changed, a big number today is a 2. Most of the first season scripts were written by Serling himself, with additional stories coming from what would come to be known as Twilight Zone's first season writing staff, Charles Beaumont and Richard Matheson, both men legends in their own right. Among the episodes featured in the first season include Twilight Zone classics, Time Enough at Last, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, Walking Distance, and The After Hours. Serling won an Emmy for his writing, his fourth, a record. First season of The Twilight Zone featured episodes that were usually great, and if not, very good. The ratings, on the other hand, were good, but never great. Despite that, the show's quality was undeniable, and in those days, that was a factor. The Twilight Zone was thus renewed for a second season. A season that, among other things, introduced a new, and now much more familiar, opening theme.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. That's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
But not everything was sweetness and light and that land between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. CBS had a new president, Jim the Smiling Cobra Aubrey. Jim Aubrey was, by all accounts, a shrewd television programmer and an asshole. CBS chairman William Paley had long held his network up as the Tiffany Network, with a blatant and public regard, respect, and support of quality programming. Playhouse 90 was William Paley's idea of a television show. Jim Aubrey canceled Playhouse 90 and brought in the Beverly Hillbillies, Gilligan's Island, and Petticoat Junction. One show Jim Aubrey was not a fan of was The Twilight Zone, which he felt did not have the ratings to justify its budget. For the show's second season, Aubrey cut the order by 6 episodes, insisting that 7 of the remaining episodes be shot on videotape instead of film, this in an attempt to cut costs. It was a decision that Serling had to obey, but hated. You can see these episodes pop up on TV or on the DVDs. They're just all wrong. They don't look right, they don't feel right, the rhythm is off. As Serling quite accurately described it, they were neither fish nor fowl. Despite those adversities, The Twilight Zone's second season was full of gems. George Clayton Johnson was added to the core writing staff of Serling, Matheson, and Beaumont. The second season gave such classic episodes as Eye of the Beholder, The Invaders, and Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? The Zone came back for a third season, much to Jim Aubrey's annoyance and Rod Serling's exhaustion. But you'd have never known by watching it. With such brilliant episodes as To Serve Man, It's a Good Life, and 5 Characters in Search of an Exit. Ray Bradbury wrote the script I Sing the Body Electric, and Earl Hamner Jr. joined the writing staff. Hamner would later go on to create the television sci-fi classic The Waltons. No, he really did. Now, as fans know, the original Twilight Zone ran 5 seasons, but it was also canceled after 3. No kidding. After season 3, the show did not land a sponsor and was not included on the schedule for the fall of 1962. In its place was an hour-long situation comedy called Fair Exchange. Serling, burnt out anyway, took a 1-year writer-in-residence post at Antioch College on his home turf in upstate New York and spent his time teaching, lecturing, and also, just as kind of a fun little side gig, wrote the screenplay to 7 Days in May. That was Rod Serling's idea of taking a break. Back at CBS, viewers felt that Fair Exchange for The Twilight Zone was anything but a fair exchange. The show did not do that well and was soon canceled. Brought in to replace it mid-season was Twilight Zone. But not the Twilight Zone. Just Twilight Zone. Fair Exchange was an hour-long sitcom, and it didn't work. Some things just work in the format they work in. Sitcoms work better at a half an hour. So did The Twilight Zone. With Fair Exchange, Jim Aubrey experimented with an hour-long sitcom. It failed. Perhaps he then thought, maybe, just maybe, I can fuck up The Twilight Zone in the same way. The new hour-long Twilight Zone premiered in January of 1963. And it didn't work. Only one episode, On Thursday We Leave for Home, feels like a Twilight Zone. But miraculously, it still did well enough in the ratings to be brought back for a 5th, and it would so turn out, final season. But back in its original half-hour format. The 5th season gave us such classics as Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Living Doll, and A Kind of Stopwatch. Rod Serling's original Twilight Zone took its viewers on their last journey to that wondrous land of the imagination on June 19th, 1964, with Earl Hamner's The Bewitchin' Pool. By this point, Serling was drained and exhausted beyond measure. The 5-year run of The Twilight Zone was composed of 156 episodes. Serling wrote 99 of them. And so, depleted, he did what anyone would do. He turned around and created another TV show. The Loner appeared on CBS in the fall of 1965. A Western, it told the story of William Colton, played by Lloyd Bridges, hot off sea hunt, as a former Union cavalry officer roaming the West in the years immediately following the Civil War. Like The Twilight Zone, Serling used the format of a Western as a stage to mount his own unique brand of morality play. Famously no fan of the comic book simplicity and historical whitewashing found in most TV Westerns at the time. In fact, his Twilight Zone episode, Showdown with Rance McGrew, is a pretty tart indictment of the genre as a whole. Serling described The Loner as a realistic, adult Western. On The Loner, William Colton didn't waste time chasing people with his horse, getting into gunfights. Instead, he wandered the prairie, encountering some form of whatever social dilemma was stuck in Serling's craw. Greed, prejudice, corruption. And he dealt with those issues in a rational and adult manner. You know who really hated it? CBS programming head Jim the Smilin' Cobra Aubrey, who said basically, I understand your show is not about horse chases and gunfights. All I'm saying is we'd like you to immediately make it about horse chases and gunfights. Serling said no, and The Loner was canceled midway through its first season. But Serling stayed busy. In 1966, he took a call from producer Arthur P. Jacobs to adapt Pierre Boulle's novel La Planète des Singes into the American movie Planet of the Apes. The script would later get a major overhaul from Bridge on the River Kwai screenwriter and Blacklist survivor Michael Wilson, but Serling's hand is clearly evident in the final product. The film, if nothing else, plays like a giant, big canvas, big budget episode of The Twilight Zone. Serling, meanwhile, wrote, taught, lectured, and in 1968 would take a phone call that he would one day come to deeply regret. When CBS announced The Twilight Zone's cancellation in 1964, ABC offered Serling to move his show to their network under a new title, Rod Serling's Witches, Warlocks, and Werewolves, with a shift in focus from science fiction to fantasy and tales of the occult. Rod passed, saying, I don't mind my show being supernatural, but I don't want to be booked into a graveyard every week. But in 1968, NBC made him basically the same offer, an occult anthology series to be called Night Gallery. This time, Serling said yes. This was a period in Rod's life where he seemed to be saying yes to pretty much everything. Rod Serling was a writer of towering ability and stunning output. He also really liked being famous. As his friend John Frankenheimer said, Rod liked being Rod. He liked being on camera. He liked wearing that suit and smoking that cigarette. At this point, in the late 60s and early 70s, Rod Serling was all over television. On commercials, he was the voice of Anacin. He did testimonials for Budweiser, Mop and Glow, Interwoven Socks. He narrated Jacques Cousteau. He hosted the first season of the game show Liars Club. There was a famous incident on an Emmy broadcast where Rod was picking up one of his many Emmys, and he gave a speech warning against the pervasive power advertisers were beginning to wield over the content of television shows. After he finished, the Emmy broadcast went to commercial. Straight into a beer commercial, starring Rod Serling.
For my money, Genesee is one of the best beers I've ever tasted. That includes foreign beers. I sure wish someone would send me some Jenny.
Hey, I'm like that, too. I look forward to some Jenny every time I go home. Genesee beer.
The Night Gallery was pitched to Serling and the public as a spooky Twilight Zone, with one major difference. Serling had no creative control over the scripts or the stories. Not that he wasn't offered, but he didn't want the pressure and the responsibility and was, I imagine, growing a little weary of the endless battles running a show entails. But he would rue the day he surrendered control. Night Gallery started off with great promise. The pilot film, Eyes, starring Joan Crawford, marked the directorial debut of a young Steven Spielberg. But soon, despite the contribution of Serling's own scripts, the show, under producer Jack Laird, began to go quickly downhill. Unfunny vaudeville blackouts were interspersed with the segments, and all in all, Serling, with no love lost, referred to it as Mannix in a Cemetery. After Night Gallery's cancellation, Serling continued to write, to teach, to produce. He was a force of nature. In all of his work, there is the recurrent theme of fairness, morality, of standing up for the little guy. Serling, by the way, was only 5'4", but he was all heart. It was an ironic twist worthy of The Twilight Zone itself, that it was his heart that finally did him in. Serling had what he thought was a minor heart attack while traveling with his brother Robert in Washington, D.C. in March of 1975. It was diagnosed as hypertension, but was quickly followed by the real deal the following May. A second heart attack followed 2 weeks later, and convinced doctors that Serling's bottomless workload and endless chain smoking had finally caught up with him. He was scheduled for open-heart surgery on June 26, 1975. A third heart attack followed, on the operating table. He was only 50 years old. Too young, too soon. Our loss. The Twilight Zone was steeped in stories of death and mortality. None more beautiful than George Clayton Johnson's Nothing in the Dark, where the specter of death pays a visit to a frightened, lonely old woman in the not-so-terrifying form of a young Robert Redford.
You see? No shock. No engulfment. No tearing asunder. What you feared would come like an explosion is like a whisper. What you thought was the end, the beginning.
When will it happen? When will we go?
Go. Look. We have already begun. There was an old woman who lived in a room, and like all of us was frightened of the dark, but who discovered in a minute last fragment of her life that there was nothing in the dark that wasn't there when the lights were on. Object lesson for the more frightened amongst us, in or out of the Twilight Zone.
This is Groucho Marx. A few days ago, I was talking with the Director of Civil Defense, and he told me some things that I feel everyone should know. Did you know, for example, that your chances of surviving an atom bomb attack are excellent? It's true. Keep a complete first aid kit handy. Keep a closed container of drinking water in your refrigerator, enough for 3 days. Take a look around your house right now and pick out the safest spot, away from windows and doors. Make sure that every member of your family understands he is to rush to that safe spot when there's danger. I'm convinced that these precautions are necessary right now. They're important to your family, yourself, and your community.
Yes, there's an air about hot coffee that's hard to resist. Full-bodied, refreshing hot coffee makes any time a pleasant interlude. Won't you have some now?
Welcome to Political Talk with two guys from Boston. A working man's look at the socio-political issues of our day. And now, Political Talk with two guys from Boston.
This is Political Talk with two guys from Boston. I'm Johnny Condon.
Robbie Sullivan here.
Oh, spring is nigh.
Can you believe it?
It's down to 50 degrees.
Oh, it's T-shirts, shorts, Birkenstocks, and socks for the people here in Boston.
It dips above 45, and people break out the tube tops and the thongs.
I do. And I get in my car, and I'm freezing, but I still feel like I'm alive.
It's coming. Summer's coming.
I can't believe it. It's March.
Yeah. And then the minute summer comes, God, when is it over? Yeah. It's too hot.
Spring's eternal, and so do the socks. Here we go.
All I think is summer's coming. I'm going to be on the 93 in traffic.
It'll be hot. The humidity.
4-hour drive just so somebody wants to go to the Egg and I got to look for parking for 2 hours.
I'll try to remember this day when it was 54 and I had shorts and a shirt on that was too small.
I'm going to bump into somebody I knew, and I'm going to have to, how long have you been on the force?
That's great.
Oh, God, I'm so tired of asking people how long they were cops.
Well, you know what? We did all the air conditioning for those cops. What, it was like 11 different families. And we went in, and we replaced their heaters, their air conditioners, all of it. And some weird things in those homes.
Weird things in those homes, and they don't tip.
No, there's no tip involved. They really think you're like, well, because we're cops. You're going to help us out.
They don't pay for lunch. They don't pay for their car wash.
It's weird. But at the same time, I guess they're public servants, and they think they got,
Oh, they think they shit ice cream out of a platinum asshole.
That's not what I was going to say.
Let's not mince words.
But I don't want to get pulled over.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a little worried about one of them might be listening, but they don't listen to podcasts.
No, they listen to the radio. They listen to the radio.
Yeah.
This is what they hear all day.
That's exactly what they hear.
And all cops think all firemen are assholes.
Yeah. They're like a step below.
And I think all planes think all helicopters are assholes.
I'm not sure planes think, Johnny.
If planes, if they all had attributes, if planes had, if aircraft had human personality, planes would be like, a helicopter would go by and the plane was like, look at that fucking asshole. Just a vertical ascent.
A mosquito with an attitude.
Oh, God, vertical ascent. Let me shit myself.
Try covering the earth, you bastard.
You land on a roof so dainty. If I landed on a roof, there'd be a crater in the ground.
Totally.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Kobe takes, in the Los Angeles, they were saying that there's a contest to go to the game the way Kobe goes to every game in a helicopter.
He goes to the games in a helicopter?
Yeah, even now, I guess that was his last season, but whatever. I mean, that's weird, don't you think?
You can be too rich.
Yeah, that seems weird.
That's such a weird, is his commute that bad?
Yeah, and also Jim Carrey on that movie Wonderstone, because he was listed as like the third or fourth actor. My sister's a makeup person. She was telling me that he had to be delivered in a freaking helicopter because he was so mad that he wasn't listed number one.
That's so, again, you get to the point where you lose touch with reality.
Yeah.
And you really have no clue. And especially with if you're in a helicopter a lot, because people aren't supposed to be looking down on everybody. You know what I mean? It's like you start to
now
think
you're a judge looking at the whole world as the jury.
Or a pigeon.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. You know that thing about if a pigeon doesn't get out of its way, it's time. My father used to say, "Oh, don't worry about hitting a pigeon.
It's his time."
Yeah, if a pigeon doesn't get out of the way, they're actually asking for out. They want out.
There's one thing about birds. I would not want to be able to fly around like that. That's when I see a bird. That is not the thing that I think. But to shit on cars with impunity would be really.
I didn't see that one coming,
that
Johnny.
Would be just
I didn't know where you were going, but that makes sense.
I mean, you could do it if you had the discipline.
Yeah, if we went out at night, you could do it.
Yeah, if you had the discipline
to be very late.
If you had the discipline to eat chili at 7 p.m. and then wake up at 3 p.m.
God.
and have a Red Bull, you could basically
get that done.
Yeah, and if you got caught, it's I know this looks weird.
Yeah,
there's no other way. That's one of those things. If your neighbor comes out.
Yeah.
And you're standing on the hood of his car, taking a dump on his windshield. There's no talking your way out of it.
There's really nothing you can say.
You just got to own it.
And you got to kind of just shrug.
Yeah. This happened.
You saw it.
I don't know what else to say.
I was getting this done. I'm not sorry. That's the weird part. I don't feel sorry.
What do you say? I used to be the tooth fairy. What else do you say?
Why does this make you happy? Would be the thought. Like the person was like, that's the look on their face.
Yeah.
Why does this make you happy?
I just wanted to see the look. Like I do that like once. I'm ashamed to say this, but I took a massive dump in my cat box and just watched the cat go, "What the fuck is in here?"
you did not.
Practical jokes on a cat.
The cat's thinking, there's a lion in the house. What am I going to do? I'm going to come out here, and there's going to be a 1,400-pound animal. They eat me alive.
I'm out of here.
I'm out. See a note. I think I know why you wanted to crap on your neighbor's car, because they had one of them Christmas gifts with a bow on it. And you know, when you get your kid a light bright, and the people next door have a bow on a car,
I know
it might tend to have a Christmas Eve. I mean, the day of Christmas night. Like, you know what? I'm going to go shit on that bow.
I feel bad for those kids sometimes, because it's like you're 16 years old and you get a car for Christmas, and you just want to tap them on the shoulder and go, now it's downhill. You got about 67 shite Christmases
That's
to do.
the last gift you'll ever get that you were impressed by.
Yeah.
From here on in, it's going to be, really?
That's it.
Electric toothbrush from my mother?
Yeah, every other Christmas from here on out is remember when I. Yeah, a light bright.
When you kids were little, we would go nuts for it.
Stratego?
Yeah. Oh, the giant Jenga.
I can't.
That's a step up. Oh, you got me a 20-pound Twix bar. Have you seen these things?
Yes.
They're like in 7-Eleven for the guy who forgot Christmas.
That's an answer to the question, why do they hate us? A 20-pound Twix bar. I cannot play Jenga since 9/11.
No,
I can't watch a tower collapse.
No, I can't either. And ever since I quit drinking soda, you were telling me I should stop drinking soda because I was getting big.
Drinking soda.
A lot of high fructose corn syrup, even in a Twix bar.
Oh, totally.
I look for that now, and I go, this will kill me.
I stopped drinking soda.
I know. I was impressed. You dropped quick.
I was dancing with a deuce. I was 194. I was 194. I was dancing with it. I cannot do it.
No, you can't be that
I was
big.
as my mom said, you're looking buttery. You're looking a little buttery.
Yeah, when my mother says to me, which chin of yours do you like the most?
Yeah.
That's not a good
moment a little buttery,
for me.
And you're not.
Yeah. Suddenly it's like, oh, here's your raisin bread. Maybe you shouldn't have milk.
Yeah. You're looking like a bunch of wet towels in a house coat.
Yeah.
I don't point it out.
Yeah. Ma, I don't tell you that your brother looks like he was caught in a storm with a bag of hammers. From drinking.
I don't tell you that your brother looks like somebody threw him in a dryer with a bunch of razor blades.
Exactly. I just leave it alone. And I go, oh, he looks good, right? Compared to last time?
Oh, that's my favorite thing. Well, I'm just telling you the truth because I love you.
No, because I want to hurt you.
Nothing good has ever followed the phrase, I have to be honest. Oh.
Sometimes honesty is different than truth.
Honesty without compassion is cruelty.
Yeah, you don't look good in that dress. Not smart.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, that's not honest. That's not
honesty
true.
without
That's stupid.
Honesty without compassion is cruelty.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier. The only thing romantic is playfulness. Without that, you can't get somebody all fired up for you by going like, you don't look good.
Nothing good has ever followed. I gotta be honest. No, that's
no, Ma, you really don't.
Yeah, no, you don't.
I don't need to know why you didn't care for anything I said while they were here.
Yeah,
and then when you said, why would you say that?
Yeah, 9 times out of 10.
Why would you think that?
9 times out of 10, I have to be honest. 5, 4, and then the other person goes, "You slept with who?"
I have to be honest. You know what? Not right now.
Yeah,
don't do it.
Here's something you never. I have to be honest. I was at a bar and I got drunk and I saw Philip Taft come in and I didn't do anything. That never happened.
Doesn't follow it. Yeah. Yeah.
The other one is I want this. I want to be cremated.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
But that's the other thing. My friend. His wife had an indiscretion, let's just call it that.
Oh, Jesus.
And he said,
a vaginal indiscretion.
I don't think it was vaginal. It may have just been lipula.
Oh, okay. I'm such a pig, I immediately went to anal.
I think it was just a very small moment.
Honey, it was just butt stuff. All right, I'm sorry, sweetheart.
Somebody tried to kiss her, and she didn't fight it off till it was in the middle of it. That was basically what happened. So someone came on and kissed her. She sort of was in the middle of the kiss and then went, oh, no, I can't.
Right.
Because she had to tell him.
I forgot. I've been married for 28 years.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea behind that, he goes, yeah, she comes in and tells me during the playoff game or during the the last game of the season or whatever. He goes, I didn't hear a thing. I just went, okay, sweetie, no problem.
Good, no problem.
Okay, no problem. We'll take care of that tomorrow.
No harm, no foul.
And then later I went, wait, what did she say? Holy, she just broke that to me during the game, and now what am I going to go back and make a big deal out of it? I don't want to hear about it no more.
No, you're done.
It's over.
You're done.
It's over.
You're done.
What are you going to do? Ma. Don't be honest. Please. It hurts everybody around you.
Don't be honest.
My mother's got a mug that says coffee on it. My sister, who's been in like AA for 20 years, knows that she drinks wine out of it. And so above the word coffee, she wrote not. And it wasn't until my nephew and I were over there that my nephew says to my mother, what's in the cup? And she said, oh, it's coffee. What do you think? It says it right on it. He goes, no, it says not. And she goes, oh, my God, I'm going to kill her.
Wine out of a mug. Doesn't that affect the flavor?
It's a coffee mug.
But doesn't that affect the flavor?
I think flavor's been gone for years when
Yeah,
it comes
that's
to getting
true.
that,
That's
getting that past the lips and into
sort of like Dayquil at this point.
Yeah, it's in your 70s at some point. You go like, I like the taste of coffee wine.
Oh, coffee wine. So
nice.
delicious.
Yeah, I was on a job once, and they was giving us, when they had food out for us. I wasn't with you. You weren't out there that day, but they had put food out for us, and the woman had a big igloo thing, and it was filled with water for us to drink. But as I'm drinking it, I'm like, this water tastes weird. Like,
did they put cucumbers in the water?
No, she had made chicken soup in it the day before.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's chicken soup water. So
this water tastes like chicken.
It tastes like a sweat of some sort. I don't know what region.
There's a reason there's
sweat.
never been a chicken drink.
Have you ever had Clamato?
Some things just aren't good. It's like they don't mix. Like I hate when people put. It's like when the people cucumber, like when you're at the dentist and they have water with cucumbers. Yeah, it's just shit. All it says to me is just shit in your water.
See, water tastes weird.
Yeah, put mints in it and make soda. I
used to think they must be putting that stuff in because they're not using good water, so they want it to taste like something, so it doesn't taste like sediment.
But it's just like it tastes like grass.
Yeah.
It tastes like a salad.
What do you drink? Do you have a reverse osmosis, or you got like a pitcher? What do you drink your water out?
I have a Brita.
Yeah.
I have a Brita that it's probably full of mold.
Well, you got to change the filter.
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Do you have little pieces of black?
Like every year?
Every month.
What?
Johnny, I'm not kidding. That's the thing.
Oh, this explains so much.
Yeah. Eventually, it doesn't take nothing out of the water.
This explains why I'm growing a G.I. Joe arm out of my rib.
That's all right. Your mother will have to be honest about it.
I got to be honest. You're growing a baby out of your side that looks like Slimer.
Ma, please, not right now.
I got to be honest. You got to change your Brita filter. I think there's a baby's growing out of your side. So here's my three phrases. I was saying I want to be cremated, but I also want a tombstone. So I don't know how to combine the two.
Oh, that's weird.
I only want a tombstone because I finally figured out what I want written on it.
Yeah.
I'll show myself out.
That's fantastic. A dear friend of mine, his name was Joseph Murphy. His gravestone reads, he died at a very young age, it reads, "You're next."
That's a good one.
Isn't that good?
What are you looking at?
Yeah.
Here's another phrase. One thing you never hear after a terrorist attack or a horrible disaster, no one ever says, one day we'll look back on this and laugh.
Political Talk with two guys from Boston. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Casper is an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the average price. Casper is revolutionizing the mattress industry by cutting the cost of dealing with resellers and showrooms and passing that savings directly to the consumer. They make an obsessively engineered mattress at a shockingly fair price. Mattresses can often cost well over $1,500, but Casper mattresses cost just $500. For a twin-size mattress, only $950 for a king-sized mattress. And all Casper mattresses are made right here in Merca. They have a risk-free trial and return policy. Try sleeping on a Casper for 100 days with free delivery and painless returns. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting Casper, CASPER.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana.
And now, on with the show.
OJ is in jail now because of his attempts to not pay Fred Goldman money for the civil trial.
Well,
in a convoluted way.
indirectly, he tried to steal back his own memorabilia.
Well, no, he hid the memorabilia so Fred wouldn't get it. He gave it to his unscrupulous people who would sell it and give OJ the money. Very quickly, these people realized, hey, we don't have to give OJ anything. What's he going to do? Go to the cops?
Yeah.
And so they were cheating him, and so he showed up and took care of business.
Let's unpack this because it's a great story that not a lot of people realize. So O.J. Simpson is acquitted.
You have to tell the story because we don't really.
No,
this happens after our trial.
I think you're more on top of it than we are.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Our research stops in 95.
The Goldmans, Fred Goldman and his family, take him to court.
Civil trial.
Right.
He loses.
Yes.
One critical difference between the two trials is OJ had to do a deposition.
Right. He had to testify.
So the difference between the civil trial and the criminal trial was they could make OJ testify. And so there is a crazy video deposition. You can watch it.
Oh, you can see it?
Yeah, it's up. It's been uploaded. OJ does not come off well in it, but Marcia Clark did not have the opportunity to put him on the stand.
I mean, that's also the thing about Double Jeopardy is that they learned all the things that went wrong with the regular trial, and they used or didn't use them for the civil trial. So Mark Furman was not a part of the civil trial, and so they learned a lot of these how to try OJ in a way that would lead to a more sympathetic verdict.
Did anyone really believe that he didn't do it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I do think you're onto something.
And did they feel that it was just Faye Resnick's drug dealer friends who traveled in jetpacks and had machetes for hands?
You don't have to come up with another theory. You don't. That's not their job to tell you who did it.
The police never had a second suspect.
Right.
No, and when they said they weren't going to look for one, it really pissed OJ off.
Right.
It did. It was like he was getting really miffed when Gil Garcetti said we're not going to pursue new leads.
Well, whatever. The recently knife was discovered. That knife was not discovered; it was turned in. That someone found on OJ's property, and the cop who initially had to suffer all these headlines of worst policeman ever finds OJ's murder weapon, doesn't report it for 15 years. Said no, I instantly called the station and told them I had a knife, and they said no, that case is closed. That's we already tried OJ. Don't even bother. So he just put it in his memorabilia drawer and didn't think about it until his toolbox until our miniseries happened, and was like, hey. I should frame that murder weapon.
I don't know, but today's newspaper made the knife story even more confusing because it said the demo was in 1998 and the workman found it. And then in 2003, the cop was working as a motorcycle officer at a movie set across the street and the workman walked over. And I can't figure out how a demo job was going on for 5 years.
Oh, I can. Oh, believe me, I can.
Exactly.
First of all, they show up 4 days a year. I don't know if you've ever had a house remodel. Supposed to take Jesus 10 minutes to walk from Golgotha, but he was a carpenter. It took him all day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
It was also the civil trial that motivated OJ's move to Florida.
Yes, because when you live in Florida, as I understand it, your house is protected. They can't take it away from you. So OJ can move all his money into real estate in Florida. But I'm speaking out of my ass here. I don't know the intricacies of Florida legal.
This is all handled in our whatever happened to what became of cards at the end of episode 10. So you're just patient. Just watch the episode 10.
It became a popular Don Postmask.
Exactly. Getting ahead of ourselves, I think.
Was this originally planned as a miniseries, or is it a continuing, like next year, do they want to do another trial? Or because it's a huge success.
Yes. It was originally thought of as a miniseries.
It actually started at Big Fox.
Right.
And
then it moved over to FX.
Right. And it was going so well that we thought, well, maybe we should do, a different court case every year, that kind of thing. And that coincided with it moving to FX, and Ryan Murphy came on board, and Ryan Murphy has American Horror Story, and he had been talking to the network about doing American Crime Story, about doing a sort of a crime story every week.
But isn't that a show? American Crime Story?
No, there's a show called American Crime.
Okay. That's not confusing at all.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very confusing. And then there was Crime Story.
Yeah, no, it's all very confusing.
There's only so many words in the English language. So yes, there will be a second season. Scott and I are producing it, but we're not writing it. We are off. Actually, we're making a film, writing a script right now about the Patty Hearst kidnapping.
Oh, another famous
trial,
which also shares Lee Bailey with OJ.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And is what's his face going to play Bailey in that as well?
Well,
I know Gary Sinise made a career of playing George McGovern, and this could be great.
Well, Nathan would have to be 20 years younger.
Oh, he could do it. He's great, by the way.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
No, he's a really good actor. That's a fascinating. Larry King playing younger Larry King.
Yes,
I fell into the world of some obscure chat room last night, and it was people arguing over whether it was really Larry King or it was, as they were calling it, a Forrest Gumpy effect. and our actors had been inserted Forrest Gumpy style. And people getting really worked up and saying, yes, it's Larry King Forrest Gumpied, as well as the very first Alan Dershowitz scene. So Evan Handler is so good in that first scene that they were convinced that we used Dershowitz for one shot.
Of course, that makes perfect sense.
But I will say that was maybe the most exciting day on the set was because we rebuilt Larry King's 1990 CNN thing. So literally, you're walking into a time machine, and you came in, and there's Larry King sitting behind there,
in his suspenders,
and
but see, Larry King was born looking 60, so he has that going for him.
Yeah,
he's in a wig, clearly, right?
He wore a wig.
He's in a wig. Well, it's the same as in Man in the Moon when.
Oh, that had so much of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
David Letterman playing himself, and
Jerry Lawler.
Himself, Jerry Lawler,
Larry King was really funny. We were there when he was shooting with Nathan, and Nathan's doing the Lee Bailey lines, and then Anthony Hemingway, the director, says, cut. And Larry King says, that was exactly the way it happened. That was perfect. I can't believe this. And then he says, yeah, it was great. All right, let's do another. Let's get a second take, which is what directors do.
Yeah.
And Larry King says, but why? It was exactly perfect. We got it, Anthony.
I'll tell you when we got That's really funny.
But it was the one thing where, like, whatever, we have so many movie stars in this on this show, but it was one time that all the producers made sure to get on that set just to get a picture of you with Larry King on that set because it was magical.
Yeah, I don't have any pictures with John Travolta, but I have a picture with Larry King.
The drive-in that I worked at in high school was renovated, is still in existence. They've added a screen.
Good for them.
And it was bought by some foodie guys. And they renovated the inside, but kept it. This is a nicer version of what
when
it
you
was.
say the inside of a drive-in, that's kind of confusing.
The snack bar.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
The concession stand.
Yeah. I took my kids like 2 years ago for the first time back to it. And I walked in and it was one of the most surreal, because I hadn't been there in decades.
Sure.
I worked there in high school. And it's basically, it's not only what it was, but it's still new. You know?
Wow.
And you get the chills. It's really a surreal experience.
Wow.
For Larry King to be in that situation, to be playing himself in his own past.
Well, it's interesting. He was playing himself in his own past. You brought up Man on the Moon. My memory of that was David Letterman said, yes, I will. I'm happy to,
anything for Andy.
Anything for Andy. I'm happy to do it. But I'm not going to dye my hair, or I'm not going to pretend like, we're not going to age me backwards in time, so, but if you don't mind using my set that I'm on right now, we'll do it here.
I always thought we should have pushed a little harder on Letterman. Like, come on, put on a wig. Everybody else is wearing a wig.
He would not have done it.
And also, here's the thing. I think
I know him well enough to tell you right now that
may have been mattered somewhat in 1999. But when you watch the movie now,
you would have had John Michael Higgins trucking over to your set so fast.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where watching it now, it's like, oh, that is young David Letterman.
Yeah, exactly. John Michael Higgins, who I actually went to college with, who's a great guy.
He's funny.
He's funny and a terrific human being. When he played Letterman on The Late Shift, the TV movie with Danny Roebuck.
Oh, I thought you just brought him up.
He was invited on Letterman.
Oh, really?
As a guest.
But not in makeup.
No. But then Letterman, halfway through the broadcast, just started making fun of him and bumped him from the show just because he couldn't do it.
Right.
Like he couldn't deal with it. And John, I mean, he's Oh, he's the nicest guy in the world. He's like,
There was a little Sammy Petrillo thing happening. Is that what you're saying?
I just think that like Letterman just couldn't do it.
What is this guy, little guy, stealing my act?
No, he's coming. John Michael Higgins is going to be here later. Maybe he'll wear his wig because he wore an orange wig, and Letterman was obsessed that his hair is not orange.
Right.
And he just got fixated on the color of. And poor John Michael Higgins is in the green room going, "I'm just trying to pay my rent, dude. I'm an actor. I act."
And then we all know Danny Roebuck, and once in a while somebody who isn't really thinking clearly will try to pitch us doing Leno and Conan as a movie.
Yeah.
Because that's a big idea
That's a big
for
story.
2 hours. I'm always tempted to say, well, I'll do it just to get Danny Roebuck the job.
That's what I think the population is now doing with Trump. It's taken us so long to get over the shock of what he's doing that people are now going, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like yesterday, Elizabeth Warren criticized him, and his response was, the Indian?
Oh,
What, the
no.
Indian?
Are you kidding me?
No, it's like Captain Lou Albano is running for president, and you see these people trying to behave in a normal way. It was always my fear of being a parent. What if I have a kid that just blatantly disregards everything I say?
Well, yeah,
Like,
or just dealing with bullies at school. Like you sort of apply some version of human logic to it. And if they just come back with a punch to your face, what do you do?
You know,
what do you do?
It's the equivalent of, I know you are, but what am I? And when he responds to a reporter that, nails him and says they're stupid, of all the inarticulate,
that's
dumb,
not truth-telling.
brutish,
That's not bold.
reactions, and for someone to say, I'm smart, I'm very, very smart.
Yeah.
It's just,
no very smart person says that.
Exactly.
He said, the only truthful thing he said was, I could kill somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose voters. And he's right. He's just at that Huey Long.
more popular than Jesus.
Yeah. But he wouldn't have said it in the way that was actually said. He wouldn't say it in a way that implies it was a negative.
Yeah, it was irony, yes.
Now, you were in LA during the Hillside Strangler, correct?
All of it, yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't have as much pop cultural traction as Manson, so shine a little bit of a light on that.
They don't realize that they tortured their victims. They injected them with battery acid.
Ugh.
I mean, it's so gruesome and so...
I'm listening.
Oh, go on. It was the kind of thing where you could never tell where they would strike. And there was two of them. That was what was so interesting.
Right, it was two guys.
Two guys.
Yeah, that's so creepy.
And they do just break every rule of human behavior.
You know what movie broke the rules of horror was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, because nobody was sacred. Even a guy in a wheelchair got killed.
Right.
And that was the first time I remember seeing that and really noticing that this was groundbreaking in that sense. I mean, God, I know it's a compliment, but yeah, it was the first movie I ever saw. And I really think it did break the rules so that, you couldn't have Saw without that.
I was disappointed that they made Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and not just move to a different state. Like Arizona Chainsaw Massacre.
Come on.
We have 48 more movies we can make.
That's right.
Lethbridge,
If not
Alberta
50.
Chainsaw Massacre.
When will they learn?
No, but it is true. There are these things that just smash, like, I don't care what you think. This is what we're going to do.
Right.
And especially bringing it back around to like the Helter Skelter thing. That was such a shock to civilized society.
Yeah.
But it was also depicted that way because they wanted to demonize hippies.
Exactly.
Not really understanding what this was really about.
People use the Manson murders as one of the signposts of the death of the 60s, but it actually happened before Woodstock.
Yeah, and it was a confluence of psychopaths. Mm-hmm. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was. It was a confluence. It was just the wrong people at the wrong time.
Yeah, the thing
meeting the wrong member of the Beach Boys.
You're absolutely right.
If they had tried to freeload off Mike Love, Sharon Tate would still be alive.
That's right.
Indeed.
About all of the things about LA that I found grotesque and that I wanted to stay away from. This is in some ways the most extreme example of what that can mean because it happened to be a psychopath who felt entitled to fame and success that he was watching people experience.
That's the difference.
And that's when that's sort of the feeling is like, oh, Jesus Christ, is that the underlying core of everyone in Los Angeles
that is
secretly thinking like, I deserve this.
That's how Charles Manson is the perfect serial killer for Los Angeles.
Exactly.
And the Zodiac Killer is the perfect serial killer for Northern California.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. He can't be famous. He doesn't have time. He's meeting people for coffee.
That's right.
Ooh. Ooh.
He's going to Cafe du Nord for a reading of his friend's play.
God.
And then on for some artisan bread and cheese.
That's right. Overlooking the bay.
Then he's going to make fun of some people at the wharf.
Yeah.
What I didn't know, and I only learned from the excellent podcast, You Must Remember This, by Karina Longworth, that a lot of the writing on the wall all had very specific, unromantic origins. The first time they were writing, and I am now just telling you things I heard on a wonderful podcast that you should avail yourself of called You Must Remember This.
You turned me on to it.
Yeah.
I've been listening to
So
it
good.
constantly.
It's so good. Although there was a weird one today. She's talking about Charlie Chaplin.
I'm
and
listening to it right now.
But she mentioned someone laughing at him, which was the only thing that I found hard to believe.
Easy.
He's never made me laugh.
No,
one
me
time.
neither, but
He's never made me laugh one time. But the first murder relating to the family was an attempted murder of a drug dealer named Lotsapapa, I believe. I might get his name wrong.
Is that the one where it was
Bobby
like the parking
Beausoleil.
lot near the Magic Castle?
I think
or something? Oh, this is before that even.
I'm not even sure, but what he said was, and I believe it was Bobby Beausoleil, and forgive me if I'm mixing up the names of members of the Manson family, but it was kill him and then write pigs on the wall in blood, and they'll think it was the Black Panthers.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And you'll get away with
It's
it.
so calculated.
Right.
Right.
And so he got caught and he got put in jail. So when they set out to kill the people at El Cielo Drive, there were two reasons. One, I'm pissed off at Terry Melcher for not giving me a recording contract with Brother Records. So let's kill the people that used to live at his house, and that will spook him. And write piggies on the wall in blood. So the cops will think that Bobby is innocent because the people are still out there. So they'll release Bobby.
Yeah.
Like, it really, and then later it's
And,
like, wait,
and
we'll start
hopefully
a-
we can start a war between blacks
and then
and
we'll
whites.
start a race war. In the meantime, we need to go to the desert and train on dune buggies. Then it goes into this completely other crazy world where he had a dune buggy army for a long time. I mean, it never, there's so many layers to that onion. Now, you were not only in LA during the Hillside Strangler, but you were also living in New York during the Summer of Sam, were you not?
I believe so.
Wait
But that
a
seemed,
minute.
that's
Trying not to trust you.
wherever I go. It was hard to be really connected to that whole idea. It was in Brooklyn.
Right.
For crying out loud. We were in Manhattan. No worries. I don't know. Somehow being shot was not as scary as the things that took place in LA. You
Yeah.
know? That can happen every day.
Yeah.
I expect to be shot. Being Irish and growing up in Massachusetts and having plates of Ted Kennedy, nobody had a plate of Ted Kennedy.
Ted Kennedy had a plate of Ted
Yeah,
Kennedy.
Ted Kennedy had a plate. We had Jesus Christ, John F. Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy. And you're probably thinking, where's Martin Luther King Jr.? This was in Boston, Massachusetts.
Enough said.
As said, yeah,
right.
as stated.
At some point, you're going to get shot in the head. That's what happens. Right out of the blue, you're going to get shot in the head. Often I would just think, like, I'm walking down the street and just imagine someone's going to shoot me in the head. And I was told by a therapist, yes, you're riddled with guilt. That's why you think that.
Yeah.
I had an MRI and they did discover I'm more guilt than man.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's nice to know, though. It's
Yeah.
not knowing.
I have an Olympian level of shame density.
Oh, quit your bragging. How do you, I mean, I don't see how the road leads to guilt, the fear of being shot.
No, it's
Or the
not the fear of
assumption.
being shot.
The assumption.
It's I deserve this. It's at some
Oh,
point
really?
someone's just going to come and pop me.
Well, that's Irish.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's totally. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not and it's over quick and it's done. And the barbarism of the Manson murders and the Black
creativity.
Dahlia, the Black Dahlia.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking Los Angeles, California, 1948. The entire nation is just coming out of the fog of World War II.
Yeah.
The Cold War has just kind of started, not even. And it's such a conservative, it's a thawing out. You know, the culture had been it had been arrested. Really, the culture was just kind of shaking off the 20s. Because in the 1930s, the culture didn't progress because nobody had money. It was just surviving. And then it goes on life support where the entire culture is dedicated to maintaining the war effort. And for the first time, people are like, oh, well, we can do stuff.
Let's look around.
Yeah, we can look around. And then this barbaric murder where this woman is not only bisected, but whoever did it had drained her blood and washed her organs in a other place, put her in a specific place on display to be found. It was before it became known as the Black Dahlia, it was called the werewolf murder.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was called the werewolf murder. The Black Dahlia came from an Alan Ladd film called The Blue Dahlia.
Yes.
And it was somehow related to Elizabeth Short used to wear a flower in her hair. And it was a complete creation of the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, I believe, at the time. Interestingly enough, the Central Park wilding case, if you remember that in the 1980s, 3 or 4 black youths were accused of sexually assaulting a woman in Central Park.
Yes.
And it said they were out wilding, and that became this thing that people were terrified of. That was created by the New York
It's
Post
hard
of the
to
New York
watch
Times.
those catchphrases evolve and grow like a fungus.
Yeah.
There was
And
an
they're
amazing...
wholly created by the media.
Yeah, there was an amazing article in The Believer by a guy named Jason Boog, who was talking about Arch Oboler and Chicken Heart. And
Lights Out, Arch Oboler?
Yes. And he interviewed
There's just
Stephen
not a lot of
King.
people I can say that to and get
Bless your heart.
get it.
Yes, darling.
I'm with my people.
Yeah. He interviewed Stephen King and Wes Craven, and I'm not sure I remember who else, but they were all connecting the idea that some of the most gruesome stuff was created post-war or during war. Because Lights Out was also during wartime and right after it. And the same thing, Wes Craven said that the stuff that he, Last House on the Left, Vietnam War. It's just an amazing parallel that was drawn.
People will ascribe a meaning to something that isn't there intentionally. A lot of people thought that the movie Night of the Living Dead was a comment in the Vietnam War, that people had become so dehumanized and desensitized, and that people were just didn't mean anything. That the kids were being treated as zombies. That it doesn't matter. They just send them out that they get killed. And people describe that. George Romero said, no. It was black and white because it would match the news footage.
Right. That was why it was so effective.
Right.
Because it looked like a documentary.
Right. And George Romero just said, no, it was a horror movie because we thought people would see a horror movie. It was a zombie because we didn't have money to make a monster. It was black and white because it was cheaper. For whatever reason, remembering Stephen King's American Express commercial.
Oh my God!
And
he did an American Express
commercial.
In the 80s, it was like, do you know me? And you would know, and then it would have their American Express card, and then their name would type out on it. He either says it at the end of his screed or then after they put his name on his card, but he turns to the camera and he goes, I'm gonna scare the pants off of you. It was the most non-scary. It was the most non-scary.
With my glasses and my lisp.
Like never braces.
With my glasses and my lisp.
Neil Brennan told me this really funny story that they were filming. Okay, it was either Neil Brennan telling me the story about the Chappelle show or someone else telling me the story about the Chris Rock show. But they were doing a remote in New York, and it was Chappelle. It was Ask a Black Person. Dave Chappelle was there. People coming up in the street, and they're like, "You ever have a question you want to ask a black person? Here's a black person. Ask them anything you want." And it was a really brilliant idea for a bit.
It's great.
And suddenly they look, and there's Stephen King, and he didn't realize it was Stephen King until he started to talk to him, and then he kind of broke and they went, I'm sorry, Mr. King, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. He goes, no, I want to do it. I want to do it.
Fantastic.
And he said, do black people like to go to black dentists?
Oh my God. Who would think that?
Exactly
That's
the point.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that his mind is so, I bet his brain is a different shape. Like there's people like Stephen King, Steven Spielberg, or Paul McCartney. Like you don't really even know what Earth is like, do you? Yeah. I know that Stephen King lives a very normal life. Mm-hmm. He goes to the store and stuff. But like people like McCartney, I met McCartney and we were both at the hardware store buying ladders and rat killer.
No way.
Interesting. I was at the hardware store
I totally bought it.
I was at the hardware store buying a raccoon trap, and they said, well, there's another guy buying one.
He wants a Craftsman socket wrench, and it's Paul McCartney.
I met him when he played on Hollywood Boulevard, and they did it from Jimmy Kimmel Live. And I'm sure you've met him several times.
He was the only Beatle I hadn't met. And I finally met him at the SNL 40th. And I went up to him, I was like, oh, I saw you at Hollywood Bowl and Dodger Stadium. And he took me by the shoulders and kissed me on both cheeks. Now, if the 14-year-old me had ever imagined that would happen, I can't even
Those are the
But
best moments.
the guy, one guy
I was
in
like
his
that when I
band-
met Lefty Frizzell.
beat.
Just a famous hobo country singer.
Oh boy, that's great. But no, a friend of mine is a guitar player in his current band, and he told me later that McCartney thought I had meant when he was in Wings.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
What a weird.
jeez, it's so strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone ever go, wait a minute, Paul, say, McCartney?
Yeah, exactly.
So funny you talk about Fred Goldman having to walk past concession stands and to have to go home and watch the Dancing Idos.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. Dancing Eagles make a
Talk about-
brief appearance on our show, but
That's not even funny.
I forgot. I actually went back
Nothing on
recently.
that show was
Someone
ever
posted on
funny.
my Facebook page. I think one of the first Dancing Edo moments from Letterman, and I forgot
From Leno.
From Leno. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
Big
just
difference.
forgot how insane it was, and it led to a Gilligan's Island parody with
Wait,
all the
what?
cast. This is a Leno 10-minute Leno bit from
Yeah.
way back. in the
What's
day.
the Gilligan's Island?
It's basically changing all the lyrics to the song with the lawyers, it's like
Do they have lookalikes of the?
no.
of the-
It's you're cutting the actual real footage, and it's insane.
Insane. And did Ito really, did he really show off a photo of our city?
Yes,
hall?
he did. Yes, he did. To Jeffrey Toobin. He didn't do it to Dominic.
we moved
Dunn.
it over to Dominic.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Right. I like that scene with Dominic Dunn and Judge Ito. Dominic Dunn was a fascinating character. I wish we would have done more with him.
I'm glad that scene worked out because Dominic's opening scene got cut because the episode was over schedule. And somebody just said, well, maybe we don't need to meet him. And we were meeting him as, that famous bon vivant from the New Yorker. Vanity Fair, excuse me. Jeffrey's from the New Yorker. And he's here and he's going to be sort of doing the Hollywood angle on things. And then the bailiff says, the judge would like to see you. And then you cut to the scene that's in the show. But that extra half page got cut out.
Yeah.
The page got torn out, and I guess it works because no one's complained.
Dominic Dunn, people don't forget, he was covering the trial for Vanity Fair. He was one of the big famous reporters that covered the trial. But it had a very particular angle because his daughter,
yes,
Dominique,
was murdered here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And his daughter is the reason we have the stalking law.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
is that Griffin Dunn's sister, cousin, niece?
Sister. Right.
Okay.
Also, Dominic wrote one of my favorite books on the OJ trial. It's called Another City Not My Own, which is technically a novel, but only a novel because Dominic changes his own name and puts himself in different situations.
And it's the story of the trial of Blowblade Blimson.
No. It's very confusing. Everyone else's name is correct.
Right, except for Dominic.
And then Dominic gives himself the name, if I'm remembering correctly, Gus Bailey. Which is, there's already a Bailey in the trial.
That's a very
so why did he pick that name?
But the book is terrific because the
It
book
would have been
is...
great if he gave him the name Fist Granite, or just like he's just portraying himself as this hard-boiled Mickey Spillane.
I mean, for any freakazoids out there, and
I don't think
a
there
few
are any in my audience.
101%. Dominic's book on tape
is great.
Is so entertaining.
Another City Not My Own on tape.
Yeah.
He
reads
reads
it. It's really fun.
Yeah. Because what he does is he tells the O.J. Simpson trial through networking Los Angeles to it's really, the chapter will begin with him having lunch with Elizabeth Taylor, and he's telling Elizabeth Taylor about what happened in court.
Right.
And it takes this whole other angle. And in books on tape, particularly if you're in Los Angeles and you're driving around town and it's just Dominic holding court and you're driving past the place where he actually was having lunch. It's very odd.
It's very strange. He was a very dear friend of Roddy McDowell's, and he wrote the beautiful story in Vanity Fair about going to see Roddy when Roddy was on his deathbed, and Roddy had salons with all of his friends, and he was you come over, and he would spend time with him, and he would give him a memento, and he's writing about my house.
Oh, wow.
And he's describing the road to my house, being in my house. And it's very strange to read. And what's also interesting is over the years, because we'd had a lot of charity events there and a lot of people that had been there when Roddy lived there, because we had stuff at the Screen Actors Guild Fund that Roddy was a part of, have brought back stuff that Roddy gave them and said, like, this belongs in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of those things that Roddy gave
What they
up
really
have-
mean is it doesn't belong
they
in
don't
my
want
house
them anymore. Yeah.
I don't really need this Conquest of the Planet
I
of the
have
Apes
a lot of
5 sheet.
Well, I have Roddy's Planet of the Apes trash can. I have Roddy's Planet of the Apes Caesar model.
I pictured
do have a
Dominic
lot of stuff.
getting this and like, thanks, Roddy. I'll take this home with me.
There was a lot of that. And the bathroom is in the Hollywood History Museum and the Max Factor Museum.
Oh, wow.
Wait, what? The what?
The powder room in Roddy McDowell's house. Now,
It got moved?
It's a very fascinating story. You'd walk into the house and right on your left is a powder
Why
room.
do I feel like the toughest part of your divorce was giving up Roddy McDowell's house?
It wasn't.
All right.
Let me disabuse you of
All right,
that.
fine.
You walk right in the left and there's a powder room. And in the powder room was all of these photos. Roddy famously had these crazy parties with awful food.
You're going to cut this out too, right?
No, this isn't there. And he would mix and match people. Ileana Douglas told me that she went to one and it was like,
You bet you'll cut that part out.
keep it up. It would be like Cary Grant, Fred Grandy. You both play backgammon. You know, he would just mix and match people. And there were photos of like Harrison Ford and Betty Davis in my kitchen from like 1985. Just,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And there's a letter on the back of the door that 20th Century Fox sent to him apologizing because they accidentally submitted him for Best Actor for Cleopatra instead of Best Supporting Actor. And the studio drafted him an apology letter.
Okay.
And that's on the thing. And a photo from the Batman set where he's Bookworm. When Roddy passed, Paul Rubens said, you have to save the bathroom. And they literally went in, photographed it, pulled it out, and rebuilt it in the Max Factor Museum.
Wow.
At the Hollywood History Museum. When we bought the
so this
house,
is a hole in your house where there was a bathroom.
there was just drywall that had been crudely painted. And so we had to go to the Max Factor Museum and photograph it to match the tile.
No, wow.
I mean, we went for a very mundane reason. We needed to see how they tiled it and what the tile was so we could redo it the way it was. And so that's a very...
Didn't they have to ask your permission to take the bathroom?
No, we didn't own it at the time. It was in the Roddy McDowell's estate or something, and they were just clearing it out.
Did they take the toilet?
I don't know.
Or was it like Japan where there's just a hole in the
There's
ground?
a hole in the floor, yeah, and a rope hanging from the ceiling. It's in China too. I do know this, and I don't like to tell the story a lot because it's kind of private, but I will. There was a lot of genetic material in the pool. Sue and I took a sample to a lab in Northern California, and I'm proud to say we are now currently growing our own tab hunter.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, dear.
No, there was someone that lived in it the person that bought it from the estate flipped it, and we bought it from them.
Okay.
The whole house looks like Mike Tyson's hotel comforter. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm going to go try to have
That's not
sex.
ectoplasm. That's rectoplasm. These jokes could go on all day.
Wow.
It's interesting. I want to take the kids there to see like these giant movie stars. Just like, that's the kitchen. Like, oh yeah, that is our kitchen, but it's Betty Davis. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, the kids will really be impressed with that one there.
They're not impressed at all. It's so funny.
Is that the star of Jezebel in our kitchen?
Dad, I was just watching Dark Passage.
Exactly.
My
this is more from the Bunny O'Hare period, though, isn't it?
My oldest daughter is a Simpsons character. My oldest daughter is Ling Bouvier, Selma's adopted daughter from China on The Simpsons.
Oh, wow.
It was written about her.
Really?
Yeah. And her baby photo is the model for the character.
Wow.
And my oldest daughter is now 13 and she's now into The Simpsons. And I didn't push her into The Simpsons. She got into it through Bob's Burgers.
So she gets into it because it's great.
Yeah.
That's why.
And so
And
she's
you can't get rid of it.
No, you can't. It's like ants. But she's watching it and she comes on.
Oh,
Because
wow.
it's a continuing character. I'm like, honey, that's you. She's like, yeah. I'm like, no, honey, that's the character I wrote about you. That episode, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just completely
that's the correct attitude. That's what you want.
And the character doesn't get older.
No, the character stays little. She gets old. Another weird story I was just telling somebody is my ex-wife and I became very good friends with Paul Rubens. And he's one
bathroom thief.
Bathroom thief, famous bathroom thief, Paul Rubens. And he's absolutely one of those people. And then
one of what people?
I put you in the same. I put you in the same category.
You know, he's one of those people.
He's one of those people. No, I put you two in the same
what
category.
What is Dana insinuating?
People that I really admired that I now get to call friends. And it's
so you no longer admire them. Now that you know them.
Then I learn what kind of people
don't meet your heroes. Don't meet your heroes. Always a bad thing.
Well, as I say about Milo and Army, don't meet your heroes unless you're prepared to pay their light bill for 50 years. But people that I looked up to and admired that I now call friends. You and Paul, Bruce Campbell, like these people that I can't, Drew Friedman, Leonard Maltin, people that I can't believe I email every day and they're friends.
You're just talking about all the stuff that clogs up my inbox.
I know. Long story longer, we took the kids to see the Pee Wee Herman show at the Nokia. And they were, at the time, I think they were 7 and 9 or 10 and 8 or something. And then we brought them backstage after to meet Pee Wee, and he was in costume, and they met Pee Wee, and they get their photos.
Did they know Paul already?
No, they didn't. It was their first time meeting him, and then they went on the stage, and they sat in Cherry, and the puppeteer was still in Cherry, so Cherry just innately hugged them.
Oh, wow.
And they were completely like, yeah, what else is it going to do?
Sure.
Of course it did. So about 3 months later, we have a Screen Actors Guild benefit at our house, and Paul shows up in his own self and
without a bow tie.
Yeah. And my daughter just looks at me and goes, "Hey, Pee Wee, come on upstairs. I want to show you my room." It's really casual.
That's good.
Yeah, Pee Wee Herman comes over everybody's house.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
he showed her his chair. She wanted to show
it was just like casual, like to them, like, yeah, Pee Wee Herman comes over your house. Of course he does. It was really great. Who was like that for you?
Well, I feel
Present
like I have
company
those all the
excluded.
time. Yeah. Well, the first one that I had that really rocked me because I was not living here yet, and so it was kind of the first one was Terry Garr. I was at the Aspen Comedy Festival, and I played guitar for a moth that Terry was hosting. And she was so kind and wonderful. And just hearing her say my name on stage was the most surreal moment. And I feel like I've had many waves of that since. I feel very lucky in that regard. And my first thought was, I can't wait to tell my dad, because he had introduced me to Terry Garr, and just every movie I could think of that we both loved, she seemed to be in.
Yeah.
So I knew it was going to be
there was a time when she was in every movie.
Yeah.
It's weird that she's not in Apocalypse Now, because
no, she's in it.
That was during the time she was in every movie.
Wait, what?
She was in. She was in everything. She was also in a Star Trek.
She was. That's right.
Yeah, she was in.
Growing up in LA, of course, when you would go Christmas shopping, you would see Cary Grant or Fred Astaire. We grew up across the street from Groucho Marx, down the street from Kirk Douglas. But when I met David McCallum,
holy Lord.
Let me tell you.
Sure.
And it was one of those things where there was a power plant above the girls' field at our high school. And they were shooting there. And, I was in my brace, my attractive brace. And we'd run track.
Brace?
We'd run track, and we were all lying on the ground.
Well, what do you mean your attractive brace?
Open. Oh, I wore the Milwaukee brace for scoliosis.
Oh, okay. And you were still running track?
Yeah, I did sports. God damn it, I wasn't going to
she wasn't going to let that keep her down.
No, I wasn't.
Show it off. Loud and proud.
So you ran track looking like Andy Serkis filming a Planet of the Apes movie.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we're all lying down on the grass. Our shirts are open because we're hot. We know nobody's there. My eyes are closed. I'm daydreaming about David McCallum, which I would always do. And I open
the man
my
from
eyes.
Uncle, but not your uncle.
Exactly. And how? Let's hope not. And I open my eyes, and there's a chain link fence right above me. And David McCallum is looking down on all of the girls.
So insane.
Everybody in school knew that I loved him. So it was like, seventh period, and everybody's like, "Do you know who he's?" Yes, I know.
Was he shooting?
They
Man
were
from
shooting,
Uncle?
and he was
They
there.
were shooting Man from Uncle?
Yeah, in a power plant above the girls' field at the high school.
I think I know that episode. I'm not lying.
Really? The power plant.
Yeah, I honestly do.
I believe you.
I've been so lucky. And they're like famous people that I forgot that I've met. Mm-hmm. I met Vincent Price.
Did you really?
Yeah, he spoke at my acting class at the University of Massachusetts in 1982.
That doesn't seem like one you would forget, though.
But it was because it was like before my show business career started, where I would like meet.
Yeah.
It's like there are certain things that stick out that are really strange. Like Janine Garofalo became really good friends with Albert Brooks in the early 90s when we were all hanging out. And I would be at Janine's house, and it was during the first Michael Jackson trial.
Oh, God.
So this is like 92 or 3. Remember? The first Funny Uncle trial for Michael Jackson. And Albert Brooks would leave these long Michael Jackson sketches on Janine Garofalo's answering machine.
Oh my God.
With him in a speak and spell. Did you ever get anything, Mr. Jackson? He would just do all of this.
Genius.
He had all this, and then I met him at like the Aspen Comedy Festival. I kind of introduced him as like, I'm Janine Garofalo's friend. And I think we spoke on the phone before. To me, meeting Albert Brooks is like a musician meeting Paul McCartney.
Absolutely.
Sure. Oh my God.
Yeah. You're in the Mount Rushmore, in my Mount Rushmore of comedy. And years go by, 10 years. And I'm at a party at George Meyer's house. All these Simpsons writers are there, and Albert Brooks is there. And I keep looking at him like out of the corner of my eye. And at one point, he catches me looking at him and he goes, "Hello, Dana."
He remembered you.
Yeah, and that blew my mind. That blew my mind.
I love
it. That blew my mind. It's like the Paul McCartney story that you said, or you're on stage with Terry Garr. I remember doing a scene in the film For Your Consideration, which was a Christopher Guest film. And I have a scene with Catherine O'Hara. And it was a scene that was cut out of the final film. But I'm on a set and they say action, and I'm locking eyes with Catherine O'Hara. And I'm acting with Catherine O'Hara. And I also ended up doing that in a different film with Eugene Levy.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and those to me are those through the looking glass. This is completely surreal to me.
Sure.
To me, knowing you, I would think one of those would be acting with Christopher Lee.
Oh, yes.
Would have been one of those this is a thing that's happening.
Well, I lobbied for him to be a host for 3 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And,
I didn't know that.
Finally, he was in a James Bond movie, and they put him in the show, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was, of course, the only person who had seen Uncle Was a Vampire, which is an Italian movie, So, but he was a great raconteur, and he actually kept in touch with me after the show.
Of course he did.
Which was very sweet.
Because he was an old British gentleman. Related to Ian Fleming.
No shit. Wow.
Yeah, his family roots go back.
Did you know that Tolkien used to write instruction manuals?
That it makes sense. Though. Well, The Hobbit is half an instruction manual.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That is,
didn't cotton to it. God.
And it never goes away. And now you said that Paul McCartney was the only Beatle that you hadn't met. How did you meet John Lennon?
Well, I didn't exactly meet him, but
you were in his physical space.
I was in his physical space. I've told this story many times. I was coming back from a photo session as a vampire because I got to design the layout with Francesco Scavullo, who was a big photographer in the 70s and 80s. And Jill Klaber was the host, and I'm walking to the elevator, and out of my peripheral vision, I see these two shapes that come into focus, and it's John and Yoko. And as
at
John,
30 Rock?
Yes, at 30 Rock. And John is passing me. He goes, "Hi, Lorraine." Not hi, Lorraine. So,
because he watched the show.
Yes, exactly. And, all the saliva in my mouth vanished. So I couldn't respond. I was like,
yeah, exactly.
That was just.
Yeah. What do you say?
Yeah. I couldn't.
My breasts make milk. What do you say?
I cook people in my womb. And then I was, going in the elevator, and I was like, what I was thinking was John said hi to me in the hall, but I didn't say it because it sounded so high school. You know? Oh my God, John said hi to me in the hall.
Yeah.
I couldn't say it, but it was just, wow.
Yeah, that's surreal.
That just killed me.
That's surreal.
But George Harrison, when the Beatles were going to first appear in LA at the Hollywood Bowl, Casey Kasem was DJ on KRLA. And he had gotten this letter from a fan essentially saying that George had hugged her in like a stressful situation. He read this letter every hour on the hour with the instrumental version of "And I Love Her" that had bongos on it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I am familiar with the track.
George Harrison is going to be on our show. I walked out of the makeup room. He is sitting in one of the chairs. He bounds off the chair and comes over and hugs me. And all I can think about is that letter with the sound of the instrumental version of And I Love Her, or which one is she? And then we kind of parted ways, and he said, Eric Idle says you give good head, which, you know, is like the needle scratch. Because I was just like, you know, of course it was just his way of breaking the ice.
Right.
But I just.
Being saucy.
Yeah, exactly. But all I could think of as he's hugging me is Casey Kasem's voice in my ears.
I like to end on an up note after all of this murder and sadness.
Yeah, it's been a really sad hour.
These are kids from China. She's actually genuinely really funny. I took her to see a play that was awful.
Like most plays.
Yeah.
Otherwise called a play.
If you can believe it. And
that's what we call theater.
Yeah. And during the intermission, she went, Dad, I think I left something in the car. And I went, what? And she went, an hour of my life I'll never get back.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 13 years old out of the corner of her mouth.
That's
I was
good.
like, all right, let's get out of here. You make me laugh, we can leave. For people that are Alexander Karaszewski fans, and there are legion.
All 8 of them.
Let me ask you 2 questions before we wrap up. And
Which one's Scott?
How do you both stay so sexy? No, because you are known as the kings of the biographical motion picture, and you have in your own way. And
it's a small kingdom,
but you have in your own way, and you're too modest to say it. You have revolutionized the way bio pictures are made. It's not the spirit of St. Louis anymore, that you structure people's lives in a way that has a more cohesive narrative drive, that it approaches as a story first. And
it's no longer spirit of St. Louis or Gandhi, because we don't want to make movies about people who did great things.
Right. Well, but there's that, but also they're told in a much more entertaining way, and it's not just a chronological recitation of events.
Right.
That you structure your screenplays in a way that is more story driven, I feel, and that you have in the pantheon of screenwriters, you guys are there. You're in the Hall of Fame, and that's
thanks, Dana.
Really important. And you're very modest, but you should give yourself credit. What is the story that people always say, this is the story you gotta tell? I got a movie for you. Ali Frazier, 74. Like, I'm sure there's one.
There's a lot.
Because I often come up to them and I go like, they gotta write that movie.
Yeah. Most of them are good ideas, but they not necessarily features,
Yeah.
Like whatever.
I mean, we've got Tommy and Dick Smothers in wax standing in the office here. So that leads many, many, many hustler producers to say, you know what you guys should do? You should do the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah, the Bob Coopers of the world.
They were on CBS and they were on Richard Nixon's list. And it's like, yeah, we know. We read the book. We know the stories. We decided 10 years ago not to do it.
Yeah. Is there one specific that people always bring up?
Because of the porn duo of Larry Flint and Autofocus, which is about Bob Crane's sex life, the number of times we've had to pass on Hugh Hefner.
Or Guccione.
Yeah.
Or Guccione, or even Al Goldstein occasionally gets thrown this way. I just never found Hefner's life as interesting as Larry Flint's. And that's the reason why you make a movie about someone.
Yeah. Although I will say, not for a movie, but what goes on there now is Baroque and horrifying.
Sure.
If you've read the stories.
Well, here's the thing.
It is getting to be like Dr. Phibes over there.
Yeah. What you're tapping into is our dilemma.
Is he still married to those 3 triplets?
I don't know, but I'm sure you read the story about like sex night at the Playboy Mansion.
No.
It's literally, it's sex night.
You're not married, so you pay attention to this stuff and go to these events. We don't go there.
This isn't Vanity Fair. Like, this is
okay.
Whoever is there, and it's sex night, and tonight's pajama night, and the girls like can't line up in pajamas. They'll kind of file in. He's there. Baby on, he's on his back. They get on top. They do 5 minutes. One gets off, another gets on. It's a lot like taking your kids to the merry-go-round at Griffith Park.
It's a living.
It's a living.
People watch this?
No, this is like it's like tomorrow night's movie night. And the girls have to go watch Now Voyager, and then the
More
next
Betty
night,
Davis.
Yeah. And then
Is
the
that
next night
lady in Dana's kitchen?
and then the next night they all have to go bone Hugh.
Me? What you're describing is the tail end of any famous person's life, which always interests us more than the beginning of their life.
Yeah.
I mean, Scott and I always joke that we get sent biographies all the time, and we instantly go to the last chapters. We instantly go to whatever someone sent me. I got as a present volume 2 of the Frank Sinatra book, which is an insanely great book. But I instantly turned to Dirty Dingus McGee, or trying to find
I would have gone further and turned to "L.A.'s My Lady."
And do you know him in outer space? That whole thing?
No.
I think it's the first episode of You Must Remember This. Like,
Okay.
He had this outer space album in the 80s, and it's literally,
Really?
My name is Francis Albert Sinatra. It's worth listening to.
I'm a big fan of those really weird Sinatra albums. There's one called like Watertown or Waterford. It basically was a weird like little one-act play kind of thing. He did it on NBC, but it was an album. And there's a lot of strange ones.
I gave my dad the book Mr. S.
Yes, that's the best book of all time.
My father's takeaway from that book is, boy, was that Joe Kennedy an asshole. I don't know. Frank's pretty creepy in the book.
Yeah, that's a great book.
But You Must Remember This, which is the podcast I always talk about on this podcast, has an amazing 2-part story about just his relationship with Mia Farrow, which is crazy.
Yes, it is.
They would go to Las Vegas, and Frank would literally fly his daughters in so Mia would have somebody to hang out with.
Right.
Like, it's like, hey, thanks for the slumber party. I got to go blow your dad now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like nuts. But again, it's like you said, people who do great things, it's not your métier.
Yes.
The Louvin brothers, I think, is a fascinating story.
The Louvin brothers. They're like a weird Christian
Christian gospel group. Wanted to be a preacher, became gospel singers. This is in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, bluegrass.
Okay. Those guys.
A famous album called Satan
the
is
Lovin'
Real.
Brothers is what.
Famous album.
I thought it was Lovin'.
Famous album called Satan is Real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, the most pious of the two was a psychotic, violent, sociopathic drunk, a true monster. And their story on the Elvis offered to have them open for him on the Louisiana Hayride right at the beginning of Elvis's ascent. And he was just blown away by how good they were and said to them, like, I want you to be my permanent opening act, which would have made their careers. Unfortunately, he said it after Ira had already gotten a couple drinks in him. And I just went, fuck you. It's just this amazing, crazy story about, like, of course, the most religious guy is the biggest psychopath of all of them. You look at that video of when the Obamas gave McCartney whatever the medal was and everybody came in and played in the White House. I wonder, is Obama more freaked out to meet McCartney, or is McCartney more freaked out to meet Obama? Because,
good question. Yeah.
Because presidents come and go.
And the first black president.
Yeah.
Constitutional scholar.
Yeah.
And head of the law review at Harvard.
One of our first adult presidents in a long, long time.
Exactly.
Yeah. It would be a shame if we went from one of the most mature, thoughtful, adult presidents to a shaved ape.
Yeah. To a Neanderthal.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I don't think that's a worry. I don't think it's a legitimate worry, but
I don't know. When I hear people say he can't win, that bothers me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to engender any kind of apathy amongst Democrats.
That's the concern, is that people don't show up. Here's the thing about Bernie Sanders that nobody thinks about, is that Bernie hasn't had a Republican sledgehammer anywhere near him.
Yes.
Yet. And there's some stuff that he was a part of in the 70s and 80s. It was just innocent, foolish, fringe party politics. Like, he was part of an organization in Vermont that declared an allegiance with the Iranian state as some sort of thing.
Wow.
Just the kind of stuff that he is going to get crucified for. Hillary Clinton, there's nothing you can say that we've not heard.
That's already,
this is the time I'm voting for the one that has the best chance of beating the
yes, exactly.
Stalin, if Stalin wants to help me kill Hitler, I'll hang out with Stalin.
Exactly.
Yeah. Talking about meeting people that you are freaked out to meet. You were a part of that for me at one point.
Yes. Yes. We were at the Aspen
One
Comedy
of my
Festival.
least cool moments.
No, it was adorable. And we were in an elevator, and the elevator doors opened, and there's George Carlin and Steve Martin. And I said, would you like me to introduce you? And, you didn't want to look like you were talking.
Yeah.
So you said this through your teeth. It was like, yeah. Very sweet.
Do you remember that we ended up having drinks with Steve Martin in the J Bar?
Yes. Yeah. I had forgotten that until you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's not a wild and crazy guy.
No, he's very serious.
Yeah.
Very shy.
Yeah. I'm so glad he had a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because writing a book about your paintings is the kind of thing a person without children does.
Yeah. Yes. That's true.
Before we go, is there anybody, like we talk about the people that you really need to meet? That's somebody I
Here's
would
the
love
thing
to
about that. I've lived a long time, and I've met a lot of people.
I'm just imagining you a talking tree.
The giving tree.
Here in the forest. I've seen the forest.
And I recognize that these people that I want to meet are strangers.
Sure.
And you will always be disappointed because there's always some sort of expectation that you've imagined what that meeting would be like.
Mm-hmm.
And it is never that. So no, the answer is no.
You don't want to meet him because you're afraid.
Well, I would love to meet the president.
Yeah.
I would love to meet him, but I can't really think of anybody else.
I've only had one bad situation with somebody that I really wanted to meet. Of the people that to me like meant something, meeting George Carlin was tremendously important to me.
Mm-hmm.
He was lovely.
Yes.
You were there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we later became friendly acquaintances.
That's fantastic.
I wouldn't say friends, but we were acquaintances.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant a tremendous amount to me. The same with Mr. Brooks. Eddie Murphy was kind of a dink.
Really?
Yeah.
He's always been very sweet to me.
Yeah.
I just think that when you're that famous, everybody has their hand out. And
Of course.
I think that that's
yeah.
really what he was.
I know I don't judge it, but I always do. Like when people meet me on my minor level of fame, I always like go out of my way to make sure it's. And actually, it's something I learned from Mr. Carlin. He would say like, this moment's about them. It's not about me. It's not about you. This moment's about them.
Exactly.
And he was very paternal, and he was very aware and cognizant of the care and feeding of his fan base.
That's a pretty sophisticated approach.
Yeah.
You know,
Not
because he started out in a time where you didn't really have to cultivate that.
Yeah. I will say a weird thing that I learned from doing a lot of episodes of Politically Incorrect in real time with Bill Maher.
Sure.
That among the nicest people I met, they were all conservatives.
That's interesting. My younger daughter was on a cheer team in Pasadena that was run by fundamentalist Christians. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the girls on the team were fundamentalist Christians, went to specific schools, their parents the same, the nicest people I've ever met. And I miss them to this day.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Charlton Heston could not have been nicer.
Oh, wow.
Could not have been nicer. I'm on with Michael Medved. And I'm on with Congresswoman Christine Waters, who's the liberal and the conservative. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading one of my favorite books, City of Nets.
Oh, I love that book.
Of course you do. And Michael Medved comes up and he just goes, if you like that book, here's some books for you. And he just gets out a pen and writes like 7 books because you will love these. You like that. That's such a great book and you'll love these books.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, I meet Congresswoman Christine Waters, and I go, it's nice to meet you. I'm going to be on the panel with you. How would you like me to refer to you? And she just looked at me and she went, I guess you'd call me Congresswoman Christine Waters.
Oh, gnarly.
And walked away.
Gnarly. Damn.
Go fuck myself.
Wow.
What?
Well, Michael Medved's very religious.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So there again, you have like a certain ethos of behavior.
I was an altar boy in the Boston Archdiocese in the late 1970s, and our parish priest was one of the coolest human beings I've ever known.
That's great.
Yeah. Dennis O'Brien could not have been a cooler guy.
I love
could
that.
Not have been, and very positive role model on my life. And I have a really great story about being on Real Time with Bill Maher, but I can't tell it to you on the air. Well, let's end this and I'll tell you.
Okay.
Other podcasts reach for the sky, gain it gold bound.
We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano.
Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
Shut the fuck up.